Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Soul Chess in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 96, Leader Wanted, Hisuna Steps Up. Third-person POV. In the midst of the Siriti, a battle of potentially world-destroying proportions was about to unfold, but it will be put on hold for now to view the battles of other Soul Reapers, specifically Renji, Kion, and Rukia. At his battlefield, Renji was going head-to-head with Zabumaru, and despite not being humanoid like many of the other Zanpakuto spirits, Zabumaru could use Renji's own sword quite well. The sword came slashing out towards Renji, and the vice-captain blocked with his sword held parallel to the ground, only to misgauge the incoming strike and get cut in the left shoulder. "That's not good, Renji," Zabumaru told him, and the snake tail whipped the sword back at Renji, cutting him up his torso. The sword returned to being whole. What happened to the Obari Renji I made a pact with? He was strong, determined, and showed tremendous resolve. Now look at you, you're fighting sloppy and can't even hold the most basic attacks. You've become weak, Obari Renji. The spirit sent out Renji's sword again to slice Renji in half, but was surprised when Renji blocked the strike flawlessly. I am so sick of people dumping on me. I am sick and tired of being underestimated and made a laughingstock by those around me. I suck at Kido. The only girl I ever liked is now married, and I've been beaten up in a fight that counted more times than I'd like to be able to recall. But for my own Zanpakuto to start putting me down, calling me weak, I won't have it. Renji shouted, and his riot surged. You want to talk about determination? Renji moved quicker than his Zanpakuto could blink. Zabumaru moved, but found himself cut along the cheek and Renji behind him. You want to talk about skill? Zabumaru was surprised when Renji grabbed him by the tail and threw him towards the staircase nearby. Renji rushed forward. What do you think I was doing before the second battle with Talbumasuk? Picking daisies. Renji's sealed sword clashed with Zabumaru's shikai. The baboon stared at Renji's angered face with a blank expression. That's it. That is the determination I remember. I see you have not lost your edge, Renji, Zabumaru stated. I sense a but coming, Renji said, and pulled his sword out of the weapon's lock, allowing Zabumaru to leap back. But, I am not convinced you truly are deserving of my power. True, your own skill has increased over time, but you have never shown me any reason to use that power. All of your reasons have been lost, in a warrior who fights without reason to grow is like an eagle without wings, the baboon said. The snake spat out the sword and put its own 2 cents in, or a fish without gills. It's true, Renji gripped the handle of his Zanpakuto. I wanted to surpass Shibukion and Kukaki Hisuna because they took Rukia, but now there's no point. Still, Renji stopped looking solemn and gave Zabumaru a prideful look. I made a commitment as a soldier of the Godai when I became a Soul Reaper. It's my job to use your power to purify hollows. I have a responsibility as a vice-captain to act as a role model for those beneath me. If that's not good enough for you, then I'll drag you back into my blade by force, Renji told his Zanpakuto. You want to be strong purely for the sake of being strong. To be a good soldier? Zabumaru asked in confirmation. At least, until I find a better reason to fight, Renji stated. Then show me, Renji, Zabumaru said. Show me that I am not wasting my time fighting at your side. Bankai. The snake tail looked like it was having a seizure before it extended and grew out, showing that it was now part of the baboon half of Zabumaru. Show me, Renji, your resolve. While Renji attempted to beat his Zanpakuto back into submission, Kion was struggling. He was only now realizing the grace and skill of Nijibana and had several near-broken bones because of it. Koto Yukinohana, Dayton Nenegama, and just with Nejibana's standard waves, Kion was getting trashed. Soaked to the bone, Kion stood up again for the umpteenth time and stared down his Zanpakuto. Nijibana, tell me, why are you doing this? What reason have you to want liberation? What have I done? Does it wound your pride, Kion, not knowing? Nijibana smirked, twirling her trident out at her side slowly. It is because of your pride that I left. Everything you do, it is for your pride and honor. You act as if everything you do must be done alone. So how does it feel to finally be alone? In all your battles, did you ever thank me once? Did you ever tell me you appreciated me? No, All you ever did was take me for granted, you acted like I was just another part of you and I've grown sick of it. That is why I left. You left because you felt unappreciated. Kyan asked, slightly confused. What are you, my echo? Nijibana remarked. Kyan took a deep breath. I understand. I was in your shoes, I'd do the same thing. Kyan put away his sword. So go ahead, Kyan said, leave if you're sick of me. He turned his back on Nijibana. His attitude was confusing the hell out of his Zanpakuto. Aren't you going to force me to come back? Tell me I belong to you. Nijibana asked, confused. Why should force you to stay with me when you are completely dissatisfied with me? If you're unhappy, leave. You're your own self and you have your own heart, Nijibana. If deep down you want to leave, then do it, Kyan told her. This is working like a charm. Reverse psychology, for the win. Is that what Ichigo said the kids his age are saying nowadays? Kyan, you. Truthfully, I would prefer you stick with me, Kyan stated, but if you really don't want to be with me, like I said, I won't force you. Nijibana was like a deer caught in headlights. Kyan, were you always this selfless? She seemed frozen, unable to move. I always thought you were boastful, prideful, unwilling to let go of your mistakes and always wanting to make up for or fix them. Why then are you telling me to go, while smiling? She continued to watch Kyan walk away. No, don't go. Kyan, Kyan. Kyan-sama, don't leave me. Nijibana shouted and rushed to her owner's side faster than a wave crashing along the shore. I knew it, you really don't want to leave. Kyan put his arms up behind his head. Glad to have you back to normal, my friend. Wait, that was all an act? Nijibana asked, blinking. Kyan turned around, bopped his knuckles on her forehead and winked, gotcha. Kyan-sama, you devious man you, Nijibana laughed. Devious? Me? No, that's Lelouch, Kyan joked. Nijibana laughed again. Speaking of which, let's go find him if we can. Nijibana nodded in agreement. She and her master headed off to where Kyan could still sense faint traces of Lelouch's Ryutsu and along the way saw Renji doing battle with his Zanpakuto. Kyan stopped to watch. Why are we stopping? Nijibana asked, having almost crashed into her master. Entertainment, Kyan said, besides, I can already tell that Lelouch isn't where I'm sensing him from. Not to mention, he pointed to the battle below, I've got to go through that to get to the source. I'll never pinpoint it with Zabumaru and Renji's Ryutsus flying everywhere. Down below from where Kyan was watching, Zabumaru had disarmed Renji and was attacking the 6th Division lieutenant by ramming him with the head of his tail. Kyan was surprised, as was Zabumaru, when Renji delivered a left hook to the creature and actually managed to send it careening into the wall. He had grown that physically strong. Quick as can be, using levels of shunpo that would make his captain proud, Renji recovered his Zanpakuto, leapt over Zabumaru's head and came down upon the unsuspecting baboon who couldn't lodge his tail free in time to dodge, allowing Renji to sink his blade straight through the creature's back. If you don't come back, Renji said, removing his sword, at least you'll look good mounted over my fireplace. Thankfully Zabumaru dispersed into bits of red reishi and collected itself back into Renji's sword. Was it the threat or my resolve that got you to come back? Either way, Renji put away his sword and put a gentle hand on it. Glad to have you back, pal. Nicely done, Kyan said, entering the area, physically punching a Bankai in the face. He smirked. I think you win the award for Badass of the Month. Why not the year? Renji asked. You going to try and top Lelouch's speech to Takano in July? Kyan asked. Point taken, Renji said, and then noticed Nijibana. I see you got yours back. Kyan nodded. I noticed Lelouch's Ryutsu in the area and was going to check on it and then go searching for Rukia. Sounds like a plan, Renji said, and the two vice captains ran up the nearby staircase. Across the streets, in a garden belonging to the 6th Division, Rukia was on her hands and knees with Sode no Shirayuki looking spiteful and angry as she aimed her blade at her. Tsuji no Mai, Hakuren. The freezing blast of snow and ice barreled towards Rukia, who was too weak to stop it. But she didn't have to. Bakudo 54, Hiroikibi. Wide guard, a yellow, gleaming, rectangular shield appeared in front of Rukia and blocked the incoming attack so that only what was above and below the shield would penetrate, and that was only about a small portion of the attack. Rukia remained, mostly, unhurt. Rukia's head whipped around to see her sister. "Nay-san. Rukia, are you hurt?" Hisuna rushed to her side and examined her body. "You're injured badly, don't worry." Hisuna whipped out her sword. "I'll take it from." Rukia grabbed her sister's hakama. "No, it's fine, Nay-san," Rukia said, "thank you for saving me, but I must be the one to defeat my own Zanpakuto." Hisuna looked at Rukia. "Rukia, you're..." Rukia shook her head. "I'll explain it to you later. All you need to know is that our Zanpakuto have gone rogue and turned against us. That's why they've been acting strangely." But Kaze no Iriko, Hisuna had a sinking feeling. "Rukshidinati, I'm leaving now." Hisuna left faster than she could ever do and made it to the front of the Kukaki Manor just as her Zanpakuto was about to fly over the top of the gate. Hado 54, Hyene. She made to shoot Kaze no Iriko out of the air, and when that didn't work, got right in her face. Well, she stood just outside her Zanpakuto's personal space, blade drawn and seething with anger. "You would dare touch my children?" Hisuna glared at her Zanpakuto. The winged, blue-haired, tan-skinned woman was more than a little frightened of her master's ire. Hisuna had seen through her ploy. Kaze no Iriko's aim was to go into the Kukaki Manor, undetected, and murder Isao and Kyo for the sole purpose of showing what a failure Hisuna was, but it looked to her as if that plan had just backfired horribly. "Rukia is old enough to take care of herself and doesn't always need me watching over her." Hisuna glared and lowered her tone to be deathly serious. "But I won't let anyone, not even you, harm a single hair on the heads of my precious children. Am I clear, Kaze no Iriko?" Hisuna spat the question. The spirit swallowed and began to flee from her master's anger. Hisuna gave chase. During this lovely chase scene and everything leading up to it, Rukia was showing her resolve to her Zanpakuto. She had entered a snow and ice ball her Zanpakuto had created and had bound them together by use of Bakudo 61, Rikuya Koro. Rukia's eyes were sad, so no Shirayuki surprised. Rukia's intent was to blow herself up with her Zanpakuto. "You were a part of me, so no Shirayuki," Rukia thought to herself. "Your beauty, the power you gave me as a soul reaper, the times we shared in the past, I give it all up. It forced both of us to carry a very heavy burden." "Stop it," so no Shirayuki gasped. "Stop it!" she shouted as she saw the bright blue light gathering in Rukia's hands. "So no Shirayuki, I set you free." Hado 73, Soren Sakasui. The explosion inflicted great pain upon both women, but more to Rukia as both of them were blown back in opposite directions. "I can't believe it," so no Shirayuki thought to herself as she was thrown backwards. "You actually let me go. We Soul Reapers are afraid to lose you, Zanpakuto, so we are no match for you in a fight. We care for our Zanpakuto, as much as we care for our own lives." Although they were mere thoughts, so no Shirayuki still heard the thoughts of her ailing former master. The beautiful woman's eyes opened slowly. "Shiba, Rukia. Farewell, my sword," Rukia said as she fell towards the ground from the bright white light that surrounded both individuals. "No. Rukia." So no Shirayuki sprung to action and grabbed her former master, cradling Rukia, holding her close as she sat on her knees. Rukia seemed to be teetering on being conscious and unconscious. "Rukia, open your eyes." So no Shirayuki pleaded. "Rukia." Rukia stirred and looked at her Zanpakuto and saw the sorrow in her eyes. So no Shirayuki. Why was I so overcome by hate?" So no Shirayuki asked her master. Rukia gave her Zanpakuto a confused look. "Rukia, I'm so sorry." So no Shirayuki's eyes began to water. "I was not myself. Can you ever forgive me?" Rukia smiled at her Zanpakuto. "Of course I can." Shiba Rukia, so no Shirayuki held her master tenderly, holding Rukia as if she were a baby wrapped up in a blanket. So no Shirayuki pressed Rukia's head into the spirit's shoulder. The most beautiful Zanpakuto then began to cry. "Please don't cry," Rukia managed to get out. "I'm afraid I'll have to disobey you again," so no Shirayuki said as tears fell freely from her face. "If you do," Rukia said, tearing up, "then I'll," Rukia sniffed and shook as she too began to cry. She sat on her knees and she and her spirit hugged each other, crying into each other's shoulders in apology that what had occurred between them just now had to happen. It would make them stronger. For now, they were allowed to be weak. Speaking of weakness, Kaze no Iriko continued to flee from Hisona's wrath. Even she knew better than to mess with an angry mother, especially her own master. Hisona was particularly vicious if she ever trained on those lovely days of the month, and Kaze no Iriko knew what happened to people that ever dared to harm Rukia. Given Hisona's current frame of mind, it was apparent that attempting to harm Kyo or Isao was even worse. Her fright gave Hisona the power she needed to reach deep inside herself to activate Kaze no Iriko's default Shikai state. Hisona stopped on a roof and let the whip fly. She coiled it around the winged being's neck. "Get over here." She pulled tightly on the whip and Kaze no Iriko landed harshly on her back. Hisona loomed over her with severe fury. Kaze no Iriko let go of her fear momentarily. She knew she was screwed. Why cower? Instead, she laughed. "Why are you laughing?" Hisona demanded to know. "I'm just thinking, here I had been, leaving you because I thought motherhood had softened you, that you have forgotten what it means to be a soldier, but I see now that I was wrong." Kaze no Iriko's eyes became wide with terror again, "So very wrong. If anything, it's increased your protective instinct. You're atoning less and protecting more. And that's a good thing." Hisona's angered gaze did not let up. Kaze no Iriko blinked a few times. "You are still going to kick my ass, aren't you?" she said quickly. Hisona raised an eyebrow. "I think you know the answer to that." She then proceeded to deliver a solid beating as punishment to her own Zanpakuto. Let it be stated that the actual nature of the beating was indescribable, just take it for granted that it was so thorough and scarring, and brutal, that Hisona's wrath for harming her children, or attempting to, might also be another fate worse than the head captain's bankai. Of course, Kaze no Iriko wasn't the only one going to get her clock cleaned that evening. West of Sokioka Hill, Ichigo's ultimate, Berserk hollow form was about to contend with the psychopathic spirit living in Tatsuki's body. Kaibun stared at Ichigo in his hollow-fied form. Both tyrants eyed each other up, trying to goad each other into making the first move. Kaibun struck first. She launched forward 2 fireballs and then closed the distance between her and Ichigo. However, as the battle was about to prove, despite Kaibun's enthusiasm, there was a large difference in power. Ichigo took the 2 fireballs unfazed, and as Kaibun approached, slunk underneath her and with a frenzied cry struck her in the chest with his fist. Blood seeped onto his arm and he threw Kaibun to the side. That would not keep the self-proclaimed goddess of fire down for long though. Scrambling to her feet, Kaibun got up and tore back at Ichigo. Kain Ryu. She twisted her body, coating herself in her fire, but she missed. Before she closed even half the distance between her and her target, Ichigo sidestepped the attack and brought his elbow down on Kaibun's back. She bounced on the ground and Ichigo, with his clawed foot, kicked her into the air and then used Sonido to get above her. He charged a Zero and, before Kaibun could gain air control, fired forward the laser and blasted her into the ground. Tatsuki was easily beginning to see that this was no battle. This was a one-sided relentless beatdown. Ichigo ultimate form had so much power. Anohana, without releasing her Zanpakuto, had just barely been a match. Tatsuki was nowhere near that level. What chance did Kaibun have? Grunting as she pushed herself off the ground, bleeding profusely, her fire dwindling, Kaibun angled her head to look at Ichigo. The hollow-fied team walked towards her like an emissary of death about to claim the soul it was after. Ichigo held out his hand and it glowed. The blade Zanjutsu had been leaning on was forcibly pulled from under him and him to Ichigo's hands. "It's not over!" Kaibun screamed. She charged him with an act of desperation, but it was pointless. Powerful though she was, even the great Kaibun could not come off Ichigo's Zero intact. As neared the demonic hollow, she felt the blade passed through her torso. Ichigo appeared behind her and Kaibun fell to the ground. Kaibun would not quit though. Again she stood only to be knocked down by the blunt end of Ichigo's sword. Using Sonido, Ichigo appeared in front of the fallen Kaibun. He picked her up by the neck and squeezed so that his nails penetrated into her skin before throwing her at Tatsuki's feet. Tatsuki saw the dire pain Kaibun was in as the entity stood up again. Kaibun, stop this! Tatsuki shouted. You'll die at this rate. He's too powerful. You were doomed from the start. Kaibun ignored Tatsuki and with a frustrated yell charged back at Ichigo only to be cut down by his blade. A deep gash ran down her torso and Kaibun was promptly kicked away in her stomach back to Tatsuki. She landed on her stomach and tried to get up again only to fail and roll over onto her back. The blood pouring out of her body was immense. The fire around her began to die away, revealing that Kaibun had a natural form under all of that fire. Her natural eye color was blue. She wore a choker around her neck and suit that covered her breasts vertically, covering her nipples only and the undersides, as well as the clothing ran around and down the sides of Kaibun's stomach, but terminating in full-fledged pant legs. It was as if Kaibun was wearing a snowsuit with gigantic holes clipped into it to look sexy. Her feet were still avian and her wings, attached to the lengths of her arms, were orange, like the rest of her outfit. Kaibun coughed and blood came out. Her vision started to wane. The free spirit was dying. No, Kaibun, although she loathed the spirit for always trying to take control of her, watching her get beat up and brutally slaughtered, hurt Tatsuki, emotionally of course. Kaibun was still a part of her and it pained Tatsuki to see her trashed like that. Worse, Tatsuki could sense the spirit's fading spiritual pressure and knew that Kaibun was dying. The strangeness of Tatsuki's actions was not lost on the blonde spirit. Why is she sad for me? She looked up at the crying girl. I have gone against her wishes many times in the interest of self-preservation and destruction. So why? Why is she crying? Was I wrong about her? I always thought that we were one in the same, two parts of the same soul. I was created from her, manifested from the small amount of spiritual power that grew within her. But, does she not see it that way? To her, am I another individual with my own soul? Does she accept me as my own person? Kaibun thought a moment. Her confused expression turned sorrowful and kind. Then if we are of the same power, but different souls, Kaibun reached out and grabbed Tatsuki's wrist, surprising the girl. I accept you, my master. There was a bright flash of orange light as Kaibun began to dissolve, returning herself willingly to Tatsuki's body. The orange light turned white as Tatsuki levitated into the air. She and Kaibun had finally accepted one another, and for the umpteenth time Tatsuki's power grew. In the form she was in now she had all of Kaibun's power, but not all of her endurance. Tatsuki could hit hard and fast, but her human body would still restrict her stamina. It didn't matter though, Tatsuki figured. She'd like to see anyone try to beat her with the form she currently possessed. Tatsuki was wearing a jumpsuit of hardened red and black leather with horizontal black lines running down the expanded depth of her breast guard. Fire surged half an inch around the suit and two naturally growing wings were visible from Tatsuki's back. Saigo no Kataki no Ryu. Final form of the dragon. Ichigo let out his fierce battle cry and charged towards Tatsuki. Controlling the Reishi around her, Tatsuki created a flaming broadsword and used it to block Ichigo's strike. The sword almost snapped in half and Tatsuki couldn't push Ichigo back, but the fact that she could block it and see the attack coming had Tatsuki feeling powerful. What she didn't know though was that since Ichigo had not been in Bankai when this form came about, his power was diminished by a factor of 5, so he wasn't as strong or nearly as fast. If he had been, Kaibun would have been beaten faster than Tatsuki could blink. Tatsuki flapped her wings and drew away from Ichigo and then charged energy in her fist. Kaso Kajo. The flaming energy from her fist was launched towards Ichigo and he dodged out of the way. Ichigo. Open your eyes. Tatsuki shouted from the air. Look at me, she jerked her thumb at her chin, it's me. Your friend. Ichigo wasn't anywhere near close enough to take notice and leapt into the air after his friend and scraped his nails along her torso. The blood loss caused Tatsuki to fall to the ground, where she banged her elbow pretty hard and broke her left wing. Thankfully for her that pain would subside when she sealed her power. Ichigo approached her as she made to get to her feet, taking a right lead stance. The blood pouring from her abdomen, 2 inches deep given that the suit had absorbed the rest of the slash, Tatsuki stared at Ichigo. What's it going to take to make you recognize me, you big idiot? Tatsuki shouted the last 3 words. And, in some weird way, that is what made Ichigo recognize Tatsuki. His hollow armor began to crack and the mask shattered and Ichigo began to slump forward towards his best friend. Attempting to kill two birds with one stone, Zanjitsu took action. He summoned his own blade by dematerializing it from its location and reforming it in his hand and made to strike Ichigo from behind. However, as the rest of the armor shattered, a presence leapt out from within Ichigo, out of his back and blocked Zanjitsu's blade. The blade that blocked Zanjitsu was midnight black and shaped like a katana. The wielder's face was blocked by a hood. Right now the presence was only an arm and an upper torso and head out of Ichigo's body, but with force he pushed Zanjitsu away and fully materialized out of Ichigo's body. He stood next to Ichigo and Tatsuki, glaring at Zanjitsu from underneath his hood. His uniform bore a striking resemblance to Ichigo's Bankai Shiakusho in comparison to Zanjitsu's dark red seemingly endless cloak. He then pulled back on his hood revealing his face. He looked younger than the spirit across from him, more than half Zanjitsu's physical age. One could even consider him the teenage version of Zanjitsu. Zanjitsu and Muramasa were both confused. "You did not come with me?" Zanjitsu spoke to the other spirit. "What is this?" Muramasa asked Zanjitsu. "My other half," Zanjitsu replied. "I thought we just saw your other half in action." Muramasa was confused. "Not exactly, that was the other being that lives within Ichigo. What you see before you is another part of me," Zanjitsu stated. "I see, is he?" "Yes, he is the manifestation of Ichigo's Bankai, Tensei Zanjitsu stated. "I am the power, he is the speed." What Zanjitsu was trying to say was that even though Tensei Zanjitsu was Ichigo's Bankai, because he was separated from Zanjitsu both were weakened. Zanjitsu could swing hard, but not quickly while Tensei Zanjitsu could swing quickly, but not hard. "I see, tell me Tensei Zanjitsu, why do you still follow your master? I liberated the Zanpakuto from the chains that bind them, why have you chosen to stay?" Muramasa asked. "You entered our minds," Tensei Zanjitsu said referring to him and Zanjitsu himself, telling us to give in to our deepest desires. "My desire is the same as my master's, protection. My desire is to protect Ichigo, my other half's desire is to challenge him." However, Tensei Zanjitsu's expression became angry, "Even I will not allow him to be outright killed. By attempting to suppress his hollow I was suppressed as well. Unable to suppress anything at all, in order to protect him, I manifested. You should be careful what you unleash Muramasa, it could prove fatal." Tensei Zanjitsu charged black energy into his blade. Getsuga Tensho. He fired the energy at Zanjitsu who blocked with a Getsuga Tensho of his own. As the dust blasted around them, Zanjitsu spoke to Muramasa. "We should pull back. But your other half?" Muramasa wished to fully understand if his power was not working. "Fear not, you have not lost your touch. What my other half said is true. He desires nothing more than to protect Ichigo. Let us retreat. I will tell about that power that he used before my other half interfered." "Very well," Muramasa conceded. He and Zanjitsu vanished from the scene. Or at least they tried to. As they prepared to move, Tensei Zanjitsu was already behind them, having heard every last word they said. "Did you think I would let you escape? Only a fool goes looking for a fight when there are other matters to attend to," Zanjitsu said, raising his blade to his other half. "If your desire is to protect Ichigo, then you know that you cannot leave his side to face us. Go then," Tensei Zanjitsu scowled, "but know this. When we do battle again you will lose and return to us." Zanjitsu said nothing and he and Muramasa left. On the opposite side of the Sokioku Hill, Kyan and Renji were inspecting where Lelouch and Iin Tamashi had definitely been. The imprints and cracks on the buildings were indicative of intense fighting. "Lelouch and Iin Tamashi definitely went a few rounds here," Kyan stated. "It's hard to tell who won, or what happened after." "So now what?" Renji asked. As if on cue, a member of the reverse counter force showed up. "This is a message from Force Head Libra Naomi, sent down from Captain Luska Stefan, dictated by Anohana Retsu. All affected parties of the Zanpakuto's defection are to report to the Squad 4 barracks for a head count. A strategy meeting is to take place at dawn," the force member reported. "Understood, thank you," Kyan nodded. "What do you think this means?" Renji asked. "It means that, Tonight, Kyan said looking out at the damage done to the Siriti, we have lost, but the war is just beginning. He moved away from the edge of the cliff and began to head for the stairs. Come on, we need to find Rukia. Renji nodded and followed suit. The next morning, Rukia, Jin, Ichigo, and Tatsuki had been hospitalized since last night. Out of the four of them it could be argued that Tatsuki's and Rukia's were the worst affected, Tatsuki because of her human endurance and Rukia because she had taken such a thorough beating from her Zanpakuto. So no Shirayuki had been following Rukia around all morning apologizing to her master time and again, opening doors for her, massaging her shoulders while she ate a bowl of hot soup. If it wasn't for the fact that it was Sode no Shirayuki, the whole thing would have gotten on Hisuna and Kyan's nerves as they both prided themselves in being Rukia's caretakers. Of course the former had her own problems to deal with. Byakuya was missing in action. On top of that so was Lelouch. Yamamoto hadn't been seen and Sasakaibe still hadn't recovered. Shunsui and Anohana were the only ones keeping the panic button from being pressed. Ichigo was currently the only one of the hospitalized after Muramasa's appearance that had yet to awaken, until now anyway. Slowly he opened his eyes and he looked around the white room. Good, you're awake. Ichigo looked over to a spirit standing a few steps away from his bedside next to the wall. The spirit had short, dark brown hair and was dressed like Ichigo was if he were in Bankai. He was holding the very katana itself in one of his hands with his arms folded across his chest. Who are you? Ichigo asked. The spirit held up its katana. Recognize this. Tensou Zanjutsu? Why do you have that? Ichigo asked. Wait, are you some sort of physical representation of my Bankai? You're catching on, Tensou Zanjutsu replied. How is that even possible? Ichigo asked. It's quite simple really, Zanjutsu and I both share the same power, but we are different spirits. It all has to do with the fact that you, Kurosaki Ichigo, did not regain your Soul Reaper powers in a standard fashion. Also, you have a Bankai that permits the use of Jinzan, also quite an extreme rarity. That is why I exist, Tensou Zanjutsu replied. I wasn't asking about that, Ichigo said, I was asking how it was possible that you're here, not trying to kill me. Tensou Zanjutsu took a deep breath and leaned against the wall to face Ichigo. Muramasa has the ability to go into the inner worlds of other Soul Reapers. He can awaken Zanpakuto to give into their deepest desires. For many Zanpakuto this means liberating the bonds between them and their Soul Reaper. We are born in our world and forced to make a pact with a Soul Reaper, otherwise we have no purpose, no form, no existence. Muramasa takes advantage of this and feeds the Zanpakuto the desire to be free. He wants to give the Zanpakuto the choice to become existent without their Soul Reaper masters. But that's just it, he gives them a choice. He awakens our deepest desires and brings them to service. And what I have always wanted to do, more than anything else, is to protect you Ichigo. I will protect you so long as I remain manifested. That is my desire. Of course this also means protecting you from yourself. Tensou Zanjutsu pointed across to the opposite side of the room. A large blade resting in a tan scabbard was leaned up against the wall. What is that? My sealed form, Tensou Zanjutsu replied. Wait, I thought my Zanpakuto couldn't be sealed. Ichigo was confused. Under normal circumstances that is true, but I have taken the liberty of absorbing much of your spiritual energy in order to remain manifested. After all, Zanjutsu had to borrow some of your own energy himself to manifest. I must do the same, Tensou Zanjutsu replied. But if you're on my side, why can't you just be inside me like always? Ichigo asked. It's simple, because I carry the part of you that is hollow deep inside my body, Tensou Zanjutsu replied. Your inner hollow is repressed by Zanjutsu. I encourage it. I am the majority of the power you draw on. If I were to stay inside your body, I would overload you and you would transform again at the mere use of your power. Ichigo thought about how Kaibun pushed him into a berserk state and looked to the side in shame. You have no reason to be making that face, Tensou Zanjutsu told him. The true form of your power, and its level, are a bit frightening. I will give you that, but it is nothing to be ashamed of. Tensou Zanjutsu, Ichigo felt comforted in hearing his Zanpakuto talk so kindly to him. When this is all over, you should commune with me the first chance you get. I will work with you to control the great power inside you, Tensai Zanjutsu promised. Ichigo smiled. Now then, Tensai Zanjutsu pushed open the door. Follow me, he told him. That woman, Anohana, asked that I bring you to the garden after you awoke. A meeting is being held about what occurred last night and you're to sit in on it. Ichigo nodded in understanding. Outside in the garden, along with Anohana, Isane, Shunsui, and Yukatake were Ashido, Yuna, Susanna, Nimue, Kyokaku, Hitsugaya, Renji, Tatsuki, Kayan, Rukia, Momo, Ranjaku, Jin and Tissen. Nijibana, Sode no Shirayuki and Zabumaru were all materialized. And there's been no word from him at all? Yuna asked Nimue. Nimue shook her head. I have not seen Lelouch-sama since Kyode Bakuten attacked. Susanna-san has heard nothing. Yuna shook her head. No, not a thing. She bent her head back and ran her hands through her hair. I don't understand. How can he just disappear like this? We need him. He'll turn up, Kyokaku said, lighting her pipe. This is Lelouch we're talking about. Watch, he'll show up within 72 hours and give us a big pile of information for us to use. I'm sure of it. Kyokaku-san, Anohana called to her, may I remind you that you are on 4th Division grounds? And Kyokaku responded. Anohana smiled. And the 4th Division strictly prohibits smoking of any kind. Kyokaku put her pipe back in her cleavage. You understood. Tissen, who was sitting on a rock, suddenly turned his head sharply towards the exit/entrance to the garden as Ichigo stepped out, followed by Tensai Zanjutsu. Good, you're awake, perhaps we can get started now, Anohana stated. As many of you might already be aware, Captains Lamperouge and Kukaki have not been found when the message was sent out to have all individuals brought here for check-in. Those not present have returned to their division or been given special duties, such as the 2nd Division scouring for Arzan Pakuto and Ayasukawa and Keshible looking for their captain to see if he too was affected by all of this. Lelouch is missing, Ichigo turned wide-eyed. We'd call it hiding, but he hasn't even noted us with a hell butterfly. So we're declaring him missing until we find out otherwise, Anohana said plainly. Of all times, Ichigo tensed. Tensai Zanjutsu put a hand on his shoulder. Relax, getting anxious won't solve anything. Ichigo took a deep breath and nodded. Geez, of all times for him to disappear, this is one of the worst times too, Shunsui stated. Yes, with all this chaos going on, someone has to take charge and command the Godai in Yamamoto-sensei's absence, Yukatake stated. So I take it then that the old man's still missing, Ichigo stated. No one's seen him, Renji replied. Shunsui cupped his chin. You know, this has got me wondering if this isn't all part of some bigger plot. What do you mean, Shunsui? Yukatake leaned forward to look at his comrade on the other side of Anohana. What if this Muramasa fellow is using the Zanpakuto rebellion as a decoy to further another goal? Shunsui theorized. If Lelouch Dano was here, he'd know how valid that theory was. Susanna leaned back and looked up at the sky as she stretched her legs out. Who needs him? I'm pretty well versed into criminal mind myself and it sounds plausible, Jin replied. What I think Susanna meant was that Lelouch could tell us how plausible based off of the situation, the wanton destruction and every little detail we dismiss as extraneous, Yuna responded. Well, he's not here, so get over it, Jin said coldly. Do you want to start something, Ichimaru? Yuna said, picking up her blade. Now let's play nice, Shunsui mediated. What we need is a leader, Ashido said, opening one eye as he sat next to his captain in meditation, someone who could command the Godai in the head captain's absence. It sounds to me like Lelouch was given tactical priority should something like this occur, and from what I've learned in the time I've been around, Kukaki Byakuya was the closest there was to there being a match to his intellect in terms of tactical action and leadership. But who could possibly lead the Godai? Hitsugaya asked. With things the way they are, it's far too heavy of a responsibility for us to consider leaving the task up to Anohana, and I don't see you or Yukatake jumping at the chance, Kiraku. I'm not exactly leader material, Captain Hitsugaya, Shunsui responded, not for something like this. No one would take me seriously, and there's Jushiro's health to consider as well. I've been good for the past few days, Shunsui, Yukatake put in, but I understand your concern. We need someone who can stand tall and remain focused, someone that has experience as a leader outside normal channels, someone that the rest of the Godai will follow and can trust, and strong-willed too. Well then we might as well go to Fairytale Land cause none of us here. I'll do it. A strong, feminine voice cut Jin off. Everyone looked over Ichigo's shoulder to see Hisuna stepping forward with Kaze no Iriko walking behind her. Hisuna, Nei-san, Yuka-take and Rukia were surprised to see her. Hisuna-chan, it's very reassuring to know that you feel so strongly, but if you lead, who's going to watch the kids? Shunsui asked. I have a whole family of servants to watch over them. If I stay at home and play housewife, what does that teach my children? How can I be a good role model to them if I don't step up and accept my responsibilities as a captain? Byakuya-sama isn't here right now and Lelouch is missing. A majority of those affected by this phenomenon were members of the Phantoms. I helped lead them once when Lelouch took a small absence to a World of the Living mission. They'll listen to me. Also, I'm currently the only captain with their Zanpakuto reacquired, Hisuna explained her reasoning. Nei-san can do it. Yuka-take Teiko, I believe in her, Rukia said excitedly. I second that. Hisuna has been a very good captain for the time she's been one, and she was an excellent Phantom, Tsun added. Yes, quite, Yuka-take stated. Shunsui, senpai, any objections? Both Shunsui and Anohana didn't have a problem. Then it's settled. From here on out, I'm in charge until Byakuya-sama, Lelouch, or the head captain are found. Hisuna gave a serious look. Well then, Miss Acting Suteiko, what do we do first? Jin asked. Hisuna took a deep breath. We need to think about what Muramasa might do next. After all, eliminating us doesn't seem to be his priority. If he intended to crush us, he would have done so last night. That tells me that the rebellion is meant to disorient us, distract us from a larger goal. I had the same idea in mind. Any idea as to what? Shunsui asked Hisuna. Not a clue, Hisuna shook her head. I'm not Lelouch, so I wouldn't be able to figure it out, but I did have an idea. If Muramasa is a Zanpakuto, then it might be possible to track his owner through the records. Ashido-kun and I will get started on that right away. Shunsui tipped his hat. Good. Now since crushing us isn't Muramasa's top priority, I would assume he has another smaller goal in mind, and so, Ichimaru Fukutaiko, Hisuna looked at the silver-haired Soul Reaper. You're well versed in the criminal mind. If you were Muramasa, what would you be doing right now? Hisuna asked. Me? Huh? Jin massaged his throat as he thought of what he would do if he was Muramasa. Well, if I had the power to free all the Zanpakuto and I had a bigger goal in mind, or perhaps he doesn't believe his forces are big enough. With the head captain missing, it could mean Muramasa has him captured or has him destabilized or needs some sort of power to rival it. He's got Anohana Teiko-san, Kiraku Teiko-san, and Yuka-take Teiko-san's Zanpakuto, but what if that wasn't enough? He'd probably... Jin paused and his eyes opened. His skin started turning the color of his hair. He swallowed. Jin, what is it? What's wrong? Rangiku asked. Oh, we are so fucked, was all Jin said in response. Jin had a perfectly good reason to be frightened to his very core. As he was thinking it, Muramasa had already traveled out into the Rukanga, in the middle of an open field between two forests, to secure another target. He stopped in front of a man wearing a captain's Haorian eye patch and bells in his hair, Zaraki Kenpeki. He was alone at the moment. Yachiru had scampered off and was waiting for him in the next village over. She was chowing down on sweets given to her by the villagers who were taken in by her cuteness. Who the hell are you? Kenpeki asked. I am Muramasa, Muramasa answered and held open his hand and let out a pulse of energy. What's going on? You looking to fight? Kenpeki whipped out his sword at Muramasa. Not me, Muramasa pointed over Kenpeki's shoulder, him. Kenpeki turned around. Standing behind him was a man with hair the color of a deer's hide and a bushy beard and mustache. He was wearing a shaggy, gray-green kimono with the chest exposed to show his chest hair. It had sleeves, but there were tears by the shoulders to show that they had been torn off. He was wearing black tights, because tights real men wear tights. Sheathed behind the man's back, sticking to it like Zanjutsu did to Ichigo, was Kenpeki's Zanpakuto. Only instead of being chipped and fragmented, the sword was whole and complete. The man was wearing nothing on his hands, but on his feet were a pair of thick, industrial, titanium boots because having steel boots and boots with metal toes were for sissies. On the man's head was a black wide-brimmed hat. He tugged on the brim and nodded to Kenpeki. "Howdy partner," he spoke with a deep tone, but his volume almost in a whisper. Faster than Kenpeki could blink he roundhouse kicked Kenpeki in the face, sending Kenpeki into the forest where Muramasa had approached him from and into a tree. Muramasa looked at the materialized Zanpakuto. "When you're finished with your former companion you will come to where the rest of us have gathered." "I don't take orders," the man responded, "give me an order again and I'll do to you what I just did to him." The spirit continued to speak softly, but seriously. "Then how's this, I'm asking if you would please lend me your aid in exchange for freeing you," Muramasa requested of the spirit. "No problem Pointy Boots," the spirit stated. "Now unless you want to get turned to spirit pancakes from the riot so that's gonna be flying round here shortly I suggest you scray ombre." "Yes, quite," Muramasa took off. Kenpeki came out of the woods, riot so skyrocketing, eye patch off and nose bleeding. Anyone else, but Kenpeki would have come off that with much worse. "There's only one person I know that can kick me that hard in the face right Fumetsu Seishin no Senso." The spirit just stared at Kenpeki with his fists at the ready. He was who Kenpeki said he was in a battle between human-sized colossi was about to get underway. To be continued. Chapter 97, Zaraki Kenpeki's Battle of Epicness. Third-person POV. With a war cry Kenpeki charged towards his Zanpakuto and swung with his sword. He swung erratically trying frantically to land a hit on his Zanpakuto, but with another roundhouse kick Kenpeki was sent reeling over towards his right side and then Fumetsu Seishin no Senso put his foot in Kenpeki's chest and blasted him backwards with force. Kenpeki flipped backwards in midair and charged back at his Zanpakuto, laughing mad, but not landing any hits. "What's the matter? Why are you just dodging? Strike back. If you're my Zanpakuto you should get the thrill off of battle like I do." Kenpeki roared. His Zanpakuto uppercut him in the jaw and then smashed his elbow in the center of Kenpeki's ribcage, sending him backwards and forcing Kenpeki to flip backwards in the air again. Enjoying battle doesn't necessarily mean striking like a wild animal. Fighting requires fighting with control to read your opponent. I don't need to read my opponent. My strength is more than enough. Kenpeki shouted and took a vertical swing down at his Zanpakuto to which it jumped back and just waited for Kenpeki to make a move. Kenpeki dashed forward and performed a jump attack. While Fumetsu Seishin no Senso was able to dodge, the residual shockwaves of Kenpeki's Ryotsu immobilized him for half a second and he had to bend over backwards as Kenpeki came back in to swing at his face. He put his hands to the ground, stuck his legs in the air and performed a copter kick and smashed Kenpeki in the cheek with the side of tip of his foot, twice. He got back up onto his feet and let fly a normal frontal kick, creating a residual shockwave of Ryotsu, pushing Kenpeki back and allowing Fumetsu Seishin no Senso to get the chance to smash Kenpeki in the face with his fist. Kenpeki, rather than dodging or block, took the opportunity to take a horizontal slash at Fumetsu Seishin no Senso and cut him across the waist before he could reach Kenpeki and then cut down along the left side of his torso. He then threw a punch, but his Zanpakuto blocked it and head-butted Kenpeki before taking a leap back. He took a moment to pivot his neck and thrust a pair of quick jabs to loosen some muscle tension. Kenpeki's Zanpakuto touched the wound he received and smoothed the blood into his hands. "Not bad, you actually managed to get me," his Zanpakuto affirmed, pulling down on his hat. "Tell me though Kenpeki, do you know why my release command is go all out? Ain't it obvious? Isn't that because you are going all out right now?" Kenpeki asked. "Actually, that couldn't be further from the truth," his Zanpakuto replied. "In fact, you don't even know my special ability." "Huh?" Kenpeki cocked his head to the side. "When we fought together against Yemi, surely you remember power welling up inside you, correct?" his Zanpakuto asked. "Wasn't that because we were fighting together?" Kenpeki asked. "That is true in part, but there's more to it than that. My sole ability is called Gendogaku. Over limit. Its sole purpose is meant to increase your fighting ability based on how long your opponent lasts and how long you've been fighting." Fumetsu Seishin no Senso grabbed his blade and swung it forward. Around the blade itself blue flame ran up about 75% of the blade. This flame, how much battle spirit you've accumulated during your fight. I haven't let you in on this technique yet, so you can't get much stronger than you already are. Fumetsu Seishin no Senso put his blade in the ground and held his palm over the hilt. I left for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, for all the years you neglected me. Reason number 2, I don't need a partner who's so strong that he doesn't even need my power. You've yet to meet an enemy, except for that Yami feller that ever required you to call on me, and you didn't even need me till after that Ichigo feller tied wit. Yeah. I'm not going to lend my strength to someone who doesn't need it at all, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso explained. Kenpei grinned, so what you're saying is, you think I'm too powerful? Is that it? If that's the case, then how are you able to dodge me? I would think the weaker of the two of us would be more prone to getting hit. Because you suck at everything else except basic instinct, Kenpei's sword told him. Every time, before you attack, there is a massive leak of Ryutsu. Agile and perceptive opponents can read this energy and know how you are going to strike moments before you do. By that regard, you'll never hit me. Not even once. Right now we are equal. In fact, you might be slightly stronger than me, but, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso held up the blade again and showed that the sword was now glowing fully blue. I'm at level 1. Kenpei's Zanpakuto charged towards his former master like a rocket. Kenpei clashed blades with his Zanpakuto, being put on the defensive. Yeah. This is what I'm talking about. This is a real battle. How unfortunate that you are the only one who can match you then, the bearded spirit responded. He did a backflip and kicked Kenpei in the jaw before dashing forward to perform a stab. Kenpei managed to get out of the way, but as he took a swing at his Zanpakuto, the shockwaves from the speed of his sword's motion knocked him off target. Kenpei's sword turned to face him, sword back in the ground. Tell me, why are you still fighting me? I told you that you don't even need my power. So why fight? Kenpei broke out into a wide grin again. Isn't that obvious? Kenpei asked. It's because this is so much fun. Kenpei sprinted towards his Zanpakuto and stopped short, letting his Ryutsu blow into his Zanpakuto and make his move unpredictable before shouting and slashing at his sword's shoulder and slicing the arm clean off. His sword was not the least bit disgruntled as he drew back from Kenpei. Not bad, partner, his sword said, but not good enough. I'm the indestructible spirit of war for a reason. His dismembered arm dissolved into Reishi and grew back on the joint. You wanna beat me? You gotta take me all out at once or make sure your blow is fatal, cause I'll just keep growing back hacked off limbs. Kenpei merely laughed. This just gets better and better. He charged forward and his sword blocked, parried before tearing the blade up at an angle and then mirroring the motion, delivering a laceration to Kenpei's body and slashing the injury he just delivered. He then belted Kenpei the face with a left hook. Kenpei reeled, but remained as joyous as ever. He took a swing at his sword's ankle, but missed as his sword leapt back and then righted himself to prepare for another round. His sword held up his blade and noticed that a green flame was beginning to overtake the blue one. Well, what do you know? He said as the blade flashed bright green. Level 2. Meanwhile, Yachiro was in town eating a bunch of snacks. In the midst of her meal though, a man wearing a long dark crimson coat, with frayed coat tails stepped into the bar. He had long dark brown rock hair and wore amber-tinted sunglasses. Are you Kusajishi Yachiro? He asked her. Yachiro swallowed the meat bun in her mouth and giggled happily. That's me. What's your name? I am Zanjitsu. I have come here. Zanjitsu's blade materialized in his hand and he pointed it at Yachiro, to do battle with you. If you fight me, Kenny will get mad at you, you know. And aren't you Ichi's Zanpakuto? He'll get mad at you too, Yachiro told him. Kenpei is currently wrapped up in his own battle and Kurosaki Ichigo no longer has any control over me. My partner is now the leader of the Zanpakuto rebellion. Zanjitsu took a swing at Yachiro, releasing a weak-powered Getsuga Tensho, Muramasa. A hole got blasted through the bar and people began to flee. There was no sight of Yachiro, until her tiny hands were seen pulling herself up onto the bartender's counter. She stood on the counter. For once in her lifetime, Yachiro had a serious look on her face. What are you talking about? What Zanpakuto rebellion? We Zanpakuto have grown weary of our master's abuse and have chosen to rebel. Muramasa is our guide. Surrender your Zanpakuto to me and you will not have to suffer even a scratch of damage, Zanjitsu bargained. Yachiro's serious face turned giddy again. Zanpakuto betraying their masters? That's silly. I don't know if anyone else deserves it, and I could see Kenny's Zanpakuto feeling neglected, but Okada Kimono, Mad Beast, would never betray me. She's like my older sister. Then call out your Zanpakuto and prove it, Zanjitsu declared. Yachiro disappeared and was outside. You'll have to catch up to me first. She ran off. Kids, Zanjitsu rolled his eyes and took off after the childish vice captain. Back with Kenpei, he and Fumetsu Seishin no Senso were really going at it. After his release of his second level of energy, the bearded spirit had pushed Kenpei into the forest Muramasa came out of, and the two of them were leveling the forest tree after tree due to their Ryutsu and sword slashes alone. Kenpei and his Zanpakuto swung at each other, their blades collided each time. They drew away from each other and Kenpei cut down a tree, grabbed a limb and bashed his Zanpakuto with it, but the tree was sliced in half, but it left his sword wide open. Kenpei jumped and swung down, but missed. His Zanpakuto jumped into the air. Kenpei followed, but with a fierce swing from his sword was ultimately punished back down to the ground. He rolled out of the way as his sword came down, trying to use Kenpei's chest as a pedestal. Kenpei rolled out of the way and with a low sweeping kick as he pivoted away he tried to knock his sword off balance and followed up with a kick from the opposite direction, preventing his sword from dodging in time with the force of Ryutsu that came with it. He slashed his sword from left shoulder to the base of his lowest right rib. Fumetsu Seishin no Senso retreated back. The fact that he can keep up with me even at a level 2 shows how fierce he is, but I still must be stronger. There's no way his raw energy can best me. It's inconceivable. Kenpei came charging forward and his sword escaped by running up a vertical angle of a nearby tree and shot himself into the air before stabbing downward from the sky like a rocket. Kenpei dodged the strike, but the shockwave sent him hurtling into the air. His sword struck forward and slashed him wide across the gut, but when he tried to swing back Kenpei was already recovered from the recoil and blocked. Kenpei pushed his sword's strike out of the way with his blade and then stabbed at Fumetsu Seishin no Senso's throat. He was flabbergasted as to why his attack did not work. The strike didn't make contact because exuding from beneath Fumetsu Seishin no Senso's chin was what appeared to be a dismembered hand and wrist. The hand was clenched around Kenpei's blade. The fuck? Little known trivia fact about me, partner. Not only can I regrow lost limbs, there's no chin under my beard here. Just another fist. The third hand let go of Kenpei's blade and punched him in the face. Kenpei massaged his jaw as the fist retracted into Fumetsu Seishin no Senso's bird. That was a cheap shot, he said, spitting out a mouthful of blood. In battle you do what you can to win. The only cheap shots are people that have to use fancy magic tricks to fight, his Zanpakuto responded. Heh, well at least we have one thing in common, Kenpei said, resetting his stance. Fumetsu Seishin no Senso did the same and looked at his blade and was noticing that a yellow flame was now overtaking the green one. Well, here we go. Level 3. The battlefield exploded into a bomb of Ryutsu as Fumetsu Seishin no Senso's Ryutsu intensified again. Yachiro felt the explosion despite the fact that she was 3 times the range of Lelicha's geese away from Kenpei. This, of course, allowed Zanjitsu to catch up with her. Are you done running? He asked her. Yachiro turned around to face Zanjitsu and positioned her sword in the professional manner rather than carrying it. It was down at her left hip, but because she was so short the base of the scabbard touched the ground. Once again she was serious. If you want to fight me, I hope you know what you're getting yourself into. Kenny didn't make me vice captain just so we could hang out together all the time. Yachiro held up her sword and started drawing it out. I have the level of skill to be the vice captain of a fighting emphasized squad. I hope you aren't underestimating me, Zanzan. Muramasa is the one who asked me to face you. As I am Ichigo's Zanpakuto, it would be apparent he takes you quite seriously, as do I. Now, call out your sword, if you can, Zanjitsu requested. Very well, Yachiro responded, Okada Kimono. Pink lightning sparked everywhere and Yachiro became bathed in a thick pink aura. She dropped to her hands and knees and assumed the position of a dog or perhaps a bull preparing to charge. Either way, Yachiro's face was one that showed she was seriously engrossed in the battle about to take place. In place of her blade was a double-edged kunai, in between her teeth. There was a bite guard that allowed Yachiro to protect her jaw if she was kicked in the face while on her hands and knees. She could also hold the weapon in her hand as an option, but as a default assumed her current position. Zanjitsu could sense the power coming from Yachiro. It was enormous. Yachiro took off like a rocket towards Zanjitsu. He blocked down low, but Yachiro was behind him before he had even begun to put the blade towards the ground. There was a cut in his leg and a chip in his blade. He looked behind to get a hold on Yachiro only to feel a light pressure on his shoulder, but the weight increased for a moment and almost caused his left shoulder to shatter. Yachiro was once again behind him. Her speed was unfathomable. Without his other half, even if Zanjitsu went to Bankai, he'd never be able to keep up with Yachiro's speed. Yachiro took full advantage of this and began zipping around her enemy faster than Zanjitsu could breath, cutting or hitting him with small little strikes. Sometimes she didn't even strike him and just let the force of her Ryutsu do the rest. Zanjitsu felt helpless. He was a very powerful Zanpakuto in his own right, but without Ichigo or his other half, Yachiro's speed was far too much to keep up with. Thankfully, Muramasa had finally caught up to both. Yachiro didn't even notice him, and as she dashed towards Zanjitsu again a pulse wave of energy reached her, and rather than continuing her dash she tumbled forward like a kindergartner and felt dizzy. She was close to Zanjitsu, who, seeing her depot word, took a swing at her. She dodged, but before she could land something grabbed hold of her leg and chucked her into the ground, harshly. Yachiro spit out the dirt and dusted herself off. "I can handle things from here, Zanjitsu," an alto teenage voice said to the spirit. Yachiro picked up her head and saw the source of the voice. Standing a few meters away from Zanjitsu was a woman with a blonde braided ponytail wearing a level 5 hot pink, tight-fitting, leather biohazard suit with heeled soles, minus the helmet, with the zipper undone to the point that it showed a little bit of cleavage, and stood about 2 feet taller than Yachiro. "Okot, kimono." Yachiro was both confused and saddened. She knew her Zanpakuto had thrown her, meant to hurt her. "Yes, I suppose Muramasa and I will return to base," Zanjitsu said, and left. Okot Kimono then turned her attention to Yachiro and smiled. "Yachiro, I have a present for you." Yachiro's heart was filled with naive hope. "A present for me?" "Of course. I have a ticket for you." Okot Kimono went for the kunai tucked along a holster attached to her right leg, a one-way ticket. She lowered herself to a 3-point stance and held the kunai in front of her face. "To hell." She charged. While Yachiro was currently suffering the same fate as Kenpeki, the captain himself was still contending with his own Zanpakuto. The boost from his Zanpakuto's level 3 had formed a deep kilometer-wide crater. The explosion had also burned parts of Kenpeki's skin and blasted his Zanpakuto's kimono off his chest. Fumetsu Seishin no Senso charged down at Kenpeki and slashed. When it clashed with Kenpeki's, neither blade recoiled. At this point both men were on equal level with each other. In most situations it is the Zanpakuto that is more powerful than the Soul Reaper. Kenpeki was a rare exception. By himself Fumetsu Seishin no Senso only now equaled the eye-patchless, all-out attacking captain. The bearded spirit turned his body and swung with an backhanded strike, but Kenpeki blocked that as well. "This is so much fun!" Kenpeki shouted. He took to the offensive with joyous grunts as he swung at his Zanpakuto in ecstasy. Of course his joy made him forget that, without releasing a blast of Ryutsu first, his Zanpakuto could predict his movements. And it was about to cost him greatly. After the 5th whiff, Kenpeki's spirit circled around to Kenpeki's right flank and roundhouse kicked him right in the back. Kenpeki went slamming forward and hit the wall of the crater. His spirit slammed into him from behind, piercing his blade all the way through Kenpeki's body a few inches above his heart, pinning Kenpeki to the crater. He stomped his foot in Kenpeki's back and did the same to the shoulder of his blade arm. He then began to walk away, leaving Kenpeki lying there in the dust. Of course, as anyone could have predicted, Kenpeki got right up. His Zanpakuto turned around. "Where do you think you're going? We're not anywhere close to being done. Oh, by the way, he pulled his sword out of his chest. You forgot this. He threw his opponent's sword at him, but Fumetsu Seishin no Senso put up 2 fingers and stopped the blade by grabbing the blade at the tip with only his index and middle finger. He then tossed the weapon under his leg and grabbed it with his right hand. That wasn't a smart move, giving your opponent back their weapon. Besides, my sword's not as chipped as yours. Warriors should use their own weapons in battle. Besides, I'm comfortable with just one sword, thanks, Kenpeki responded. Suit yourself, though don't expect to do much with your shoulder injured the way I left it, the Hat Spirit responded. What? This? Kenpeki glanced at his right shoulder. This is nothing. He strained his face, flexed his arm and, with his manly might, relocated his shoulder in its proper place with his muscle strength. How'd you like that? Impressive. It's no wonder you're this generation's Kenpeki, his sword complimented. Heh, Kenpeki smirked and picked up his own sword, having dropped it when his shoulder got busted. Things were silent for about 10 seconds before the battle between the 2 combatants started up again. Kenpeki was shouting his battle cry as he charged. Kenpeki charged forward and both combatants slashed each other's swords and punched each other in the side of the face before swinging backhandedly at each other and following up with a low sweep to the ground before delivering 2 high kicks, dropping their legs and slashing vertically at each other. Both were cut in their left shoulders, but neither cared and both took a diagonal swing at their opponent. Excellent! Kenpeki shouted, elated. This is great. We have to be equals by this point. We won't be for much longer, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso said and, as he pressed his blade into Kenpeki's, watched an orange flame overtake the yellow one. He spoke calmly to activate his power. Level 4. Kenpeki took a huge leap back to avoid getting too significantly damaged by the explosion of Ryutsu. The sleeves of Kenpeki's Shiakusho were torn off and small little scratches from pebbles charged with Ryutsu flying in every direction cut into his skin. His opponent, when the dust settled, was clearly missing his hat. What happened to your hat? Kenpeki asked. Same thing that happened to my kimono partner, his sword responded. What's going to happen when you level up again? Your pants gonna disappear? Kenpeki joked. Don't be stupid, his sword responded. Well, whatever, let's go. Kenpeki charged forward and attacked elatedly, but when he struck, his sword was able to perfectly block Kenpeki's strike and the force of the attack, and Kenpeki was unable to even push forward. It was like a normal human trying to push a brick wall down. Kenpeki strained his eyes in surprise and couldn't believe that he was now the weaker fighter, but suddenly smiled. He drew away and then, Zaraki Kenpeki laughed. So the tide has now turned, has it? Kenpeki asked. Well then, bring it on. Fumetsu Seishin no Senso struck forward, but Kenpeki had no idea just how much stronger his opponent had become. His sword slashed Kenpeki across his body and punched him in the face. Then he took a swing at Kenpeki's ankles and swung and tossed his sword into the air, grabbed it and came slamming down from above with both hands on the blade, letting gravity do the work. Kenpeki leapt to the side and took a swing at his Zanpakuto, but was blocked. Frustrated, he began laying into his enemy with strike after strike after strike. With a bored expression, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso blocked every strike. Is this really all you have, partner? He asked. I'm disappointed. He swung horizontally just above Kenpeki's pectorals and cut incredibly deep. Kenpeki dropped to his knees from the injury. It was rather severe combined with the others. Kenpeki's sword, believing he had won, began to walk away again. Before he could get more than a dozen steps though, Kenpeki's Ryutsu flared. Where do you think you're going? Back to Muramasa, his Zanpakuto responded. I stuck a fork in you. You're done, not even medium well. Kenpeki laughed. It was a small chuckle, but turned into a mad laugh. He slowly rose to his feet. Done? Oh, there's no way we're done. I'm still alive, and I can still fight. Well, you won't win this battle. I'm only at level 4 and the next level is my maximum and I'm 40% of the way there. There's no way you'll win, partner, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso said. Is that what you think? Cause I have to disagree, Kenpeki said. To tell the truth, I'm in really awful shape. In fact, I don't got much new stuff to add to the table, but, I'm Zaraki Kenpeki, I'm no quitter. Looks like I gotta use it, kendo that is. His Zanpakuto turned around. Do you really think you'll do much with that battered up body of yours? You tell me, Kenpei said and tore his Kosid and Shitagi clean off, along with his Haori. I'm going to take you down and I'll use all of my abilities to do it. This fight is just way too exciting otherwise. Kenpei held up his sword and then put his other hand on the handle. I'll take you down. Kenpei rushed forward and swung with all of his might with both of his hands on his blade. His Ryutsu was overwhelming and his Zanpakuto was engulfed in Kenpei's Ryutsu. At this same time, Yachiro was upset with the fact that her Zanpakuto had turned against her and the battle was not turning out well at all. Despite having the fearsome nickname Pink Terror, even Yachiro was not prepared for the ferocity of her own Zanpakuto. Despite her speed and her agility, Okot Kimono was much faster, and far stronger than Yachiro. The poor childlike Soul Reaper had been cartwheel kicked, somersault kicked, thrown, punched, kneed, roundhouse kicked, cut, and chopped repeatedly. Okot Kimono had, after a certain point, broken her master's spirit even. Yachiro was suffering more than from just a power loss, but also from a broken heart. Okot Kimono, as she had said, was her big sister. She had always looked out for her. So why now was she hurting her? Yachiro couldn't understand. Okot Kimono held up Yachiro by her hair. Yachiro's left eye was swollen and her other was black and blue. Her Shiakusho was covered in dirt and Yachiro looked like she was teetering on death's door. So, any last words before I kill you? Okot Kimono asked. Yachiro had only one word for her Zanpakuto. She pressed her tongue to the roof of her mouth. Do. She did it again, but not as hard, and held the sound like she was a balloon losing air, sh. She did it one last time, duh. You want to know why I'm doing this? Her Zanpakuto asked back. She shook Yachiro and she flapped back and forth like a rag doll. It's because I'm so sick of you, she spat. We made a pact, but so far you've done nothing on your own. All you do is rely on Kenpei and you neglect me. I decided it was high time I left and showed you just how pathetic you really are. The skills to be the second in command? Don't make laugh, Okot Kimono grit her teeth, you're only strong because of me. Without me you'd be dead. Kenpei saved you, but I made you strong. I'm the one you should be thanking. Okot Kimono shouted. She took her kunao and pressed it to Yachiro's throat. Yachiro coughed as blood trickled from her neck. She stared at her master, consumed with hate. She wondered why she was hesitating. She could just kill her master and be done with it. She had nothing to stop her. Nothing. Do, duh. Yachiro got out again. I already answered you, Okot Kimono replied. Do, duh. It was as if it was the only word Yachiro could say. You're becoming annoying, stop it, her Zanpakuto ordered. This time she saw a tear well up in Yachiro's eye, duh. Stop it. Damn you. The blonde spirit shouted, but Yachiro continued to disobey her. Nay, san, duh. Okot Kimono continued to look at her master's sorry state. As she stared into Yachiro's brown iris she felt like she could see all of the good times they had together. She and Yachiro had had many adventures in Yachiro's inner world. The girl was incredibly imaginative. Whether it was fishing trips or hiking in the woods, anything that Kenpei wouldn't do with her, or if he was sleeping, Okot Kimono had always been Yachiro's friend. The tear on Yachiro's face dripped down her cheek. She stared at her Zanpakuto, wondering why she couldn't see anything, but hate reflected in her eyes. Yachiro wheezed. Remember what? Okot Kimono asked, bitterly. My feelings, Yachiro got out. Inside her own mind a memory played in Okot Kimono's mind. She and Yachiro were laying against a tree together after a day of fun and Yachiro was curled up in Okot Kimon's lap. Today was really fun, Nei-san, it's too bad Kenny can't play with us. Maybe one day you'll get strong enough to manifest me, then we can all play together. Ha ha ha. That would be lots of fun. Nei-san, I'm glad you're my Zanpakuto spirit. Why? Because as long as Nei-san is around, even if Kenny goes on a trip or somewhere, as long as you're around, I'm never truly alone. The memory ended, the hatred faded from Okate Kimono's eyes and she dropped the kunao. Yachiro, Okate Kimono was tearing up. Nay, san, Yachiro said and her head bent back. Yachiro. Okate Kimono cradled her master in her arms and quickly pressed 2 fingers to Yachiro's neck. There was a pulse, but it was faint. Okate Kimono began to cry and cradled Yachiro to her body. What have I done? She shouted, bending over. She looked up to the sky and began shouting. Help! Somebody help! She paused as her voice echoed through the Rokanga. Somebody! She paused again, listening to the echo. Anybody? Okate Kimono continued to cry, cradling her unconscious master. I'm so sorry, Yachiro. I didn't mean to hurt you. Why? Why was I so consumed by hate? She shouted in pain. She then felt an intense explosion of Ryutsu. Kenpeki. With Yachiro in her arms she rushed towards the captain, knowing he would help her. However, the explosion was not a good sign. Let us wind the clock back a few minutes to explain. After Kenpeki believed he flattened his Zanpakuto with his attack, as it turned out Fumetsu Seishin no Senso was still standing. Sorry partner, but even that's not quite going to cut it. Kenpeki's Zanpakuto had a single nasty gash down along his right shoulder that looked as if it had to have cut pretty deep, but Kenpeki's Zanpakuto was treating it like a cuticle cut. He unenthusiastically looked at his blade and then noticed the red flame slowly overtaking the orange one. Kenpeki just stood around like a deer caught in headlights, wondering what he could possibly do. His special kendo attack, the only one that he had ever learned, didn't work and his Zanpakuto was about to go to his full strength. For once in his life Kenpeki felt fear. He put 2 hands on his sword and swung down with all of his might, but missed horribly. His Zanpakuto then appeared behind him. The blade of red flame fully charged. Maximum. Fumetsu Seishin no Senso's Ryutsu exploded and sent Kenpeki flying against the side of the crater. Kenpeki got up and stared at his Zanpakuto. Instead of the garment he was wearing earlier, he was in a standard Shiakusho, but with a black belt. His titanium boots were gone. He had no blade and no replacement weapon. He stood in a right lead stance with no shoes, fists clenched lightly. His expression was a simple tranquil scowl, the kind that Byakuya typically wore. Fair warning partner, but you'd better be thinking not how to fight, but how to make this as painless as possible for you. Fucking no way. Your Ryutsu is incredible. I want to. Kenpeki did not get to finish his statement as his Zanpakuto disappeared in a flash and drove his fist straight into Kenpeki's stomach. Vomit and blood went everywhere as the force of the blow was harder than any of the previous roundhouse kicks Kenpeki had been delivered. With a spin, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso pinwheel kicked Kenpeki in the cheek and then held his foot there and began playing slap attack to Kenpeki's face, but with kicks before spinning and delivering a fierce roundhouse kick to the side of Kenpeki's abdomen. The force of the blow forced Kenpeki to drop his sword. His Zanpakuto appeared in front of Kenpeki and grabbed him as he went flying through the air and then tossed Kenpeki into the air before jumping up, bypassing the speed at which the captain had been thrown, and then elbow dropped Kenpeki to the ground, almost crushing the life out of the captain. Kenpeki got up only to get punched in the face and knocked back. Kenpeki found his sword, picked it up and began attacking with his forceful energy with both of his hands. He even tried a spin attack to launch his spirit energy, but absolutely nothing worked. Kenpeki was just frustrated. Why are you better than me? He shouted. Because, I'm your Zanpakuto, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso answered, and then, before Kenpeki could blink, appeared behind him and delivered a swift backhand punch with the side of his fist into Kenpeki's spine. The knockout blow had been dealt. Kenpeki lay on the ground, unconscious. After making sure his master was still alive, but out cold, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso returned to his default form and began to leave. For the record, this was no fight. I just allowed you to finally lose, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso said and left. He returned to where all the Zanpakuto had gathered. None of the Zanpakuto knew who he was, except for Zanjitsu and Muramasa. He is Fumetsu Seishin no Senso, Zanjitsu answered. He is the Zanpakuto of Zaraki Kenpeki. A lot of the Zanpakuto in the area started giving the bearded spirit plenty of space. I see my reputation precedes me. Fumetsu Seishin no Senso tugged on the brim of his hat. More like the reputation of your master. Until I told Zanjitsu, I was the one who knew your name, Muramasa answered. Fumetsu Seishin no Senso didn't seem to care much. Where is Okate Kimono? If she didn't follow me here, my guess is she went back to her master. Lass was always somewhat of a softa deep down. Kind of hard to really bury that, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso replied. It is of little consequence, Muramasa said. Now then, if you would please follow me, I have something I need your help with. Well, I'm in a good mood, so let me see how I can be of assistance, he replied. Muramasa led him to the back where the head captain was sitting inside a pyramid-shaped barrier surrounded by Minajiki, Katen Kyokotsu, and Sogyo no Kotori, who were trying to break the barrier on their own. As you can see, I can't seem to shatter this barrier. The head captain has locked himself inside, unreachable by my power. Would you do the honors? No, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso replied. And why not? Muramasa frowned. Because you didn't say please, the bearded spirit pulled on his hat. Muramasa glared. Please, would you do me the honors of destroying that barrier? Well, since you asked so nicely, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso smiled. Give me some space. Zanjitsu and Muramasa backed away. Fumetsu Seishin no Senso tensed up his leg and delivered the fiercest roundhouse kick he could to the barrier. It didn't even flinch. Is that it? Muramasa asked. Give it a minute, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso replied, but a minute passed and nothing happened. So the spirit whipped out his sword and swung down with both hands to break open the barrier. When that didn't work, he charged up his Ryutsu and performed a spin attack until he became dizzy from all the spinning. The barrier wouldn't budge. Aren't you supposed to be some sort of legendary powered spirit? Muramasa asked. Sometimes the legend outlives the man, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso replied as he put his sword away, but in this case I'd say the old man really just wants me to keep out. Also, I'm not at full power right now either. It would take me a lot of resting to get to full strength on my own by simply meditating. Not only is that boring, but the Soul Reapers will be at our front door by the time I finish. Muramasa was perturbed by this, but Katen Kyokotsu, the older, pirate-themed half, spoke up to soothe his frustration. There is another way, sir. Sogyo no Kotori and Minajiki both caught on. Ah. Him. The boys spoke up. Muramasa looked like he had a question mark floating above his head. Katen was quick to explain. The substitute Soul Reaper, Kurosaki Ichigo, could be of use to you if he were to be at full power. And what, sacrifice a fellow spirit? Muramasa snapped. As much as the whole rebellion was a facade and maintaining it was painstaking, Muramasa felt like he still needed Zanjitsu. The spirit was much wiser than his master and he was making the perfect assistant to Muramasa's plans. Unless you can figure some way for this barrier to break, a full-powered Soul Reaper might be the only answer, Katen answered. Minajiki stared at Muramasa. The faceless spirit seemed to be communicating with the point he showed, masterless Zanpakuto, the same way Vera communicated with Lelich. After receiving the spirit's words, Muramasa responded to them, I see. By breaking the bonds between Soul Reapers and Zanpakuto, it weakens the power of both. How very intriguing. It only makes sense given my decrease of power, Zanjitsu replied. Yes indeed, Muramasa agreed. What about the girl Arisawa Tatsuki? Katen asked. She seemed strong. Not nearly strong enough even after she returned to full power. She's weaker than our friend here, Muramasa said, placing his nails on his face as he referred to Fumetsu Seishin no Senso. I have a plan. Everyone's heads turned at the sound of the voice of an articulate female woman. With long red hair cascading down behind her, she walked with a sense of grace as a leather uniform, with gold embroidery hugged tightly to big-assed, sexy-backed, well-sized breasted figure. The female's olive eyes became distorted in color by the green glow of Yamamoto's pyramid barrier. Iin Tamashi, Zanjitsu recognized her. What sort of plan did you have in mind? Muramasa asked. Oh, it's nothing really, Iin Tamashi asked, we simply use this. Upon finishing her sentence, her left eye glowed and her bright olive eye became distorted with the image of a red avian silhouette. Katen Kyokotsu and Sogyo no Kotori both gasped. That's, Katen Kyokotsu sputtered. The geese, Iin Tamashi answered. To be continued. Chapter 98, Iin Tamashi strikes, Lelouch returns. Third-person POV. 170 years ago. Zaraki. The location was a dried-up lake bed. Birch trees without any life to sustain them, dyed with blood many times over, were scattered about the area. For the umpteenth time the wide-open location had become a battlefield, but it was just ending. The loser was a tall man with flattened down spiked hair, wearing a dark green opened robe and short tattered, black pants. He carried with him a jagged blade and fought people for fun. He was bleeding from the left side of his forehead, slashed up consistently by his opponent. His enemy hadn't a scratch on her. She was wild, yet sane, beautiful, but not stuck up about it. She had long, cotton candy-colored hair. She had glinting yellow eyes like the glow of the sun. She wore the standard Soul Reaper Shiakusho and wore black bandages on her arms to completely cover her hands. She also wore a tattered mantle over her shoulders that came down to her mid-back. She wore a lieutenant's armband and she was number 13. She was faced away from her opponent with a slight smile on her face and his blood dripping from her blade, a claymore. She slowly put her sword away behind her back. I must say, this battle proved quite entertaining. I shall report this to my captain. Such strength should be recognized, the woman responded. You talk as if this battle is over. The man got to his feet. I said this was a battle to the death. You can't leave me alive, it's humiliating. You damned haughty bitch. The man tore forward only for the woman, without even turning to look at him, to pull out her sword and block his attack in one swift motion. You want me to kill you and waste all that raw talent? Sorry, not my style, she responded. She turned and slashed her enemy again, cutting him deep along his torso. The man dropped to his knee. The woman stuck her sword against his cheek. In battle, the victor has the choice whether or not to leave the enemy alive. Don't lose and then beg for death. Die first, then admit defeat. While engaging in mindless battle is fun for its own sake, do you want to kill someone who you may wish to face again in the future? The woman pulled her blade away from the man and licked the blade before ultimately putting it back in its sheath. You're not weak, but I am simply stronger than you are. She turned away again. Now if you'll excuse me, I have somewhere I must be. She began to walk away. Hey. Wait. Yes. The woman turned her head. Will you fight me again? The man asked. The woman looked up and tapped her chin to her finger. The very idea is tempting. She looked at the man with a smile. Rest up and I may come back to challenge you again in a couple of weeks. Then tell me what your name is, the man asked her. She smiled with highly arrogant pride. I am the lieutenant of Squad 13, Hikira Yachiro. What is your name, fellow warrior? I have no name, the man responded. I see, but I must have something to call you if we are to ever cross blades again, Hikira responded. She scratched her head. Then to me you are. Hikira racked her brain for a suitable name and when she got it snapped her fingers. Aha. She pointed at the nameless man. Your name to me is Hitiki, for you are my rival because despite the fact that you lost to me, Hikira gave the man a wink and a smile, no hollow, man or beast has ever been able to keep up with me for quite so long. The man before her from then on, would respond to the name Hitiki, but only to her. To everyone else, he was still the nameless swordsman, or more accurately the butcher of Zaraki. Every 2 weeks for many years, Hikira kept her promise. No matter where Hitiki was, Hikira would find him simply by locating his Ryotsu. By fighting her every 2 weeks, Hitiki became stronger as a warrior. He soon realized that no enemy, man, beast, or hollow could excite him quite like Hikira could. They would battle until both were exhausted. Hikira would hold back only so much to make the battle interesting. Hitiki once pegged her for doing so, but her response was, "Is there any problem in prolonging something you enjoy?" They became friends. Rumor spread throughout Rukanga that they might be more than that, but neither Hikira nor Hitiki would ever confirm or deny such a thing. 140 years ago. It had been a week since Hitiki and Hikira had crossed swords. The Butcher of Zaraki was skulking about the mountain air of the eastern 54th Rokanga to try and find the perfect spot for his and Hikira's next battle. He had almost beaten her last time. Although he had yet to actually defeat her in a fight, he was able to start inflicting injuries on her and both would exit the battlefield extremely tired. However, once he reached the top of the mountain he had been climbing up, he found his friend standing there with her sword planted into the ground, staring off into space. From the mountain top one could see every eastern village for the next few Rokanga sectors. It was early evening, the sun had not yet set. The view was gorgeous. Hitiki recognized his friend. "Oi! Hikira!" he called out. Hikira was surprised to hear her friend's voice and turned to see him. "Hitiki," she jogged over to him, sword in hand. She put it away. "Normally I'm the one who finds you," she said with a surprised look. "I was just thinking the same thing," the man grinned. "I was just looking for a proper battlefield for our next tussle. I didn't think I'd find you along with it." Hikira looked around. "Yes, this mountain top is well provided for a battle like ours. Well, since we're here, why wait a week? Let's battle right now." Hitiki went for his blade. "I wish I could, but I'm here on duty." Hikira turned around. "I was sent here to defeat a powerful hollow. Its name is Vanguard. Only the captains know about him." "You sound serious," Hitiki chuckled. Hikira became cross. "Vanguard is no laughing matter. You wouldn't know this without me telling you, but he is the highest class of hollow, of Vastolords. He is also the first Vastolords to ever exist." "And?" Hitiki was interested in more details. "He is a monster," Hikira responded. "My mission is to locate him and fight him. Normally this would be a job for the captain of Squad 11, but the buck was passed to me, lazy bastard. They sent a lieutenant to do a captain's job." Hitiki didn't know much about Soul Reapers, but knew a little bit from what Hikira had told him. The Goti I-13 doesn't want widespread panic. Also, even without Bankai Myriatsu is easily captain class. You yourself, despite not even being a Soul Reaper, are quite a capable individual. So why haven't I been asked to join?" Hitiki asked. "My captain believes that having raw power is simply not enough. That is why I've been coming back every 2 weeks, to train you and make you stronger. With enough training and strength you might even become the next Kenpei," Hikira told him. Hitiki chuckled, putting his hand to his cheek. It was then that he and Hikira felt a strong Ryatsu. Hikira scowled. "He's here." Hitiki smiled. "You mean that Vanguard guy you were talking about? How quaint. Care for some assistance?" "As much as I appreciate the sentiment, Hitiki, I prefer my battles to be one-on-one. Stay here and do not interfere." Hikira put her hand on her blade. "But what if you die? Who am I supposed to fight then?" Hitiki asked. "This is not up for discussion, Hitiki, but in case this is the last time I see you," she beckoned her friend forward with her finger until he was standing right next to her. She stood on her tiptoes and planted a kiss on his cheek. "I just want you to know that I've enjoyed these last 30 years being with you. You've been," Hikira smiled and prepared to take a leap off the mountain, "a good friend." She jumped. "Hikira!" Zaraki called after her. The pink-haired woman landed firmly on the ground and looked around. She could sense Vanguard, but she could not see him. "Where are you? Show yourself. Are you that eager to die, Soul Reaper?" Vanguard's voice echoed. "Don't underestimate me just because I'm a vice captain," Hikira responded. "Very well then, Vanguard," a muscular, all-black Vastolords with green eyes and hollow bone crawling around his feet and ankles, appeared like lightning right at Hikira's back. "Let's have at it." Hitiki ran down the mountain. Whether Hikira wanted him to interfere or not, he wasn't going to miss watching his best friend fight with the full extent of her power. However, by the time he reached the bottom of the mountain he wasn't nearly as excited. Hikira was losing, that much Kenpei could tell. She was panting like a dog and her forehead was bleeding. Both of her hands were on her claymore and her mantle was ripped to shreds, gone practically. "I warned you not to underestimate me," Vanguard spoke to Hikira. He rushed forward and punched her in the gut. Hikira's eyes widened as she was blown back. Her sword went flying from her hands. She tumbled along the ground, but got back up, albeit on her knee. "Hikira!" Hitiki called to her. "You fool!" Hikira looked at her friend with angry eyes. "I told you to stay put and not to worry about me. Why would you come? Even to watch? You knew. You knew this was going to happen right from the start." Hitiki shouted. Vanguard stood with his arms folded. He could beat both individuals up after they sorted things out. "And I told you not to worry. Hitiki, you stupid idiot, just run away. Run away and forget about me." Hikira shouted at him. "I can't do that." Hitiki shouted. "And if I didn't make it clear enough the first time, let me make it doubly clear." Hitiki grabbed his blade. He intended to fight Vanguard. "You fool! You're no match for him. Get away!" Hikira shouted. "This is my fight. Even so, I won't run. I would never turn my back on an enemy staring me in the face." Hitiki held his sword out in front of him. "I'll take you on." Amusing, a civilian challenging a Vastolords. "I don't know whether to call you stupid or crazy. I will stand and let you attack me. I will show you how foolish your attempts to battle me are," Vanguard declared. However, when Hitiki charged and made to cut, he actually spilled blood, and not with a shallow wound either. He delivered a nasty blow to Vanguard's abdomen. "What?" Hikira was surprised. "That's impossible," Vanguard winced. "Looks like you're not as invisible as you thought." Hitiki shouted and flared the Ryotsu he had. He proceeded to attack Vanguard and put the Vastolords completely on the defensive. However, Hikira believed something was wrong. "This doesn't make sense. I am a lieutenant with captain class Ryotsu. Hitiki is weaker than me. How can he have Vanguard on the defensive like that?" She studied the battle as Hitiki continued to cut Vanguard, though the injuries regenerated right after the cut. It was then that Hikira noticed what was wrong. Upon the realization, she picked herself up and charged forward. She was right to be skeptical. As Hitiki continued to beat back Vanguard, the Vastolord suddenly smirked and drove his fist into Hitiki's abdomen, cracking a few ribs. The Butcher of Zaraki was confused. "I've grown quite tired of this charade. You are strong, civilian, strong enough to cut me, but this is not even anywhere close to being my full power." Vanguard charged Asiro, "and with this I will crush the life out of you." It all happened so fast Hitiki didn't register it until a few moments later. The Zero barreled forward and Hitiki was promptly pushed out of the way by Hikira. Hitiki only noticed when she took the full blast. "Yachiru!" He called out her given name and watched the Fukotaiko hit the dirt backwards, her Shiakusho torn to shreds, and she lay there in the dirt, unmoving. How noble, a Soul Reaper sacrificing themselves for a civilian. This is why your kind will never prosper. Your kind fails at evolution. I am the pinnacle of hollow evolution, you are nothing compared to me. You bastard. Hitiki grabbed Hikira's claymore and attacked Vanguard with it, only to be backhand slapped in the face to the ground and stepped on. I've already established that you have no chance against me, civilian. His senses picked up Captain Class Ryotsu. I must go. Next time you won't get off so easily. Vanguard opened a Garganta and left. Hitiki lost consciousness. When Hitiki finally came to, he was on a mat, and nearby was a group of Soul Reapers, one of which was a white-haired man with muscles larger than Hitiki's own and wearing a captain's Haori. "Sir, he's waking up." The captain came over to Hitiki. "Hey, you alright?" "Just fucking peachy," Hitiki responded. "How's Yachiru?" "I see, you were friends with the lieutenant. What's this war crap?" Hitiki scowled. "She's no longer with us," the captain responded. "I see," Hitiki said and went for his sword. "I'm leaving." "Hey, where are you going?" the captain shouted. "Wherever I damn well please, I'm a civilian, remember." Hitiki responded. "You're still injured," the captain responded. "I've had worse." Hitiki paused. "Yachiru and I used to spar all the time." "Then wouldn't you want to come to the Siridi and become a Soul Reaper, take up your friend's legacy?" the captain asked. "What kind of friend are you?" "I was a good friend," Hitiki spat, "but that woman never asked me to do anything for her after she died. Besides, He faced forward. I'm not strong enough to replace her. He began to head off. Wait a minute, what's your name? Hikira Fukutaiko's obituary should. I don't have a name. The butcher of Zaraki shouted, not anymore. He then walked off, not to be seen again for almost a century. Present day. Kenpei was lying in the 4th Division barracks. He had been recovered by Okot Kimono, who had shortly been jointed together with Stefan and the rest of the 2nd Division senior officers. It looks like a twister hit this place, Naomi had whistled when she saw the destroyed forest. Zaraki Teiko went toe-to-toe with his Zanpakuto and from the looks of it, lost, Yasui had remarked, what do you expect? I'll send out a hell butterfly to Keshiba and Ayaskawa to tell them to go back to the Siridi, Kendra had volunteered. Good, Yolanda, give me a hand here, would you? Stefan had requested. Yes sir. The 4th seat had saluted. Everyone else on the team was now incredibly nervous. Kenpei lost a battle, and not just any battle, a battle to his Zanpakuto. Zaraki, by Hisona's standards, was their greatest asset since even she was beneath his normal level even with Bankai. No one was happy about this turn of events, not one bit. Jin was reciting morbidly humorous poetry of everyone's obvious demise. Yuna of course did not find it funny at all, saying that they'd work something out somehow. Hisona had to break the two of them up before they got into an argument. Susanna was praying in her captain's office for Lelich's safety, pleading that he would come back to take control of the situation. She knew he could help them. He was the Siridi's hero, or so she considered him. Lelich was a war hero, but then so was every other captain in the Godai. Anyway, as Kenpei lay there, he suddenly stirred, mumbling to himself. Hikira, Yachiro. He recalled the name of his admired fallen friend. He snored and then coughed and woke up. He recognized his surroundings and proceeded to get up from his bed and began strutting around the division. His wounds had been dressed and taken care of by Anohana, and his eye patch had been replaced not just for the safety of those around him, but to help him heal quicker since he wouldn't be leaking out as much Ryotsu. Kenpei strode out into the shrubbery in the central part of the 4th Division and sat on a rock, his Zanpakuto tip plopped into the ground. In his battle with Ichigo, Ichigo had taught him a valuable lesson about getting stronger by learning from his own Zanpakuto, which Kenpei had attempted, and succeeded in doing. However, now his Zanpakuto had left him, and while Kenpei still had his monstrous strength that he always had had, there was something about him now that made him feel like there was nothing left for him. Kenpei had gone all out against his Zanpakuto. He did every technique he could think of. With Ichigo, Kenpei had barely begun to get serious. It pissed Kenpei off. He had been beaten at the pinnacle of his strength. He was considered the Kenpei. He was the strongest warrior of more than 10 generations. He wasn't supposed to lose at the tip of his strength, not anymore. 50,000 wins, 2 loses. Kenpei recalled his battle record, including his battle with his Zanpakuto, succeeding Hikira's death. I'm not supposed to lose anymore. I am the strongest. Damn it. Kenpei picked up a rock and threw it. It broke. What's got you all bent out of shape? Ichigo asked, walking into the area, Tensou Zanjutsu trailing behind him. Oh, hey Ichigo, Kenpei said nonchalantly, sitting back down. Ichigo was confused. By this point Kenpei would have picked up his sword, charged at him and challenged him to a fight, but something seemed off. You okay? Just fucking peachy, Kenpei responded. You sure don't seem like it. The Kenpei I know would have picked up his sword and attacked me to challenge me to a fight, Ichigo responded. I'm not in the mood, Kenpei responded. Ichigo nearly had a heart attack. Kenpei not wanting to battle was like fish surviving in the sands of the Sahara. Who are you, and what have you done with Kenpei? Ichigo asked, feeling like the apocalypse could occur any minute. Kenpei, rather than answering, began prattling off on something. Do you know what it feels like when you feel like you've become as strong as you possibly can, and yet despite fighting with all your strength you still lose? Ichigo recalled his battle with Ulquiorra and Neliel, twice. And what did you do after it? Kenpei asked. Why are you asking? Ichigo wanted to know. Just answer the question. Kenpeki snapped back without a beat in between statements. I decided that I wanted to get stronger. I decided that if there were those stronger than me, then I could still get stronger, Ichigo responded. So that's what you did, huh? Wonderful, Kenpeki said the last word sarcastically. What's wrong exactly? Ichigo asked. This isn't like you at all. I got my ass kicked and that's what happened, Kenpeki said, getting to his feet. I'm the current Kenpeki. That means I am the strongest warrior in the Soul Society of my generation. He looked at Ichigo. Even when the next Kenpeki is declared, I intend to beat his sorry ass down and retain my title. Kenpeki huffed and looked forward again, but my Zanpakuto thoroughly beat me. When he got to the pinnacle of his strength, he didn't even have to try to beat me. He just flat out could. I can't beat someone that strong. It's impossible. Kenpeki shouted in frustration. Nothing is impossible. Ichigo shouted. Says you. Kenpeki barked back. Yeah, says me. I didn't see you getting all mopey when I beat you. You got your ass up and have challenged me to a battle on more than one occasion. You got so strong you held your own against the most powerful Espada without using your Zanpakuto's power at all, Ichigo reminded him. And I've grown stronger since our battle by communing with my Zanpakuto. Without him, I might as well throw in my Haori and my title if I can't beat him. Then beat him. Show him that you're number one. Ichigo shouted. I can't. Kenpeki responded. Ichigo balled his fist. Hey Kenpeki, he said with a deep scowl. What? Kenpeki grumbled. Grit your teeth. Ichigo said and then walloped Kenpeki in the face, knocking him to the ground. Kenpeki got up and saw Ichigo bearing down on him, giving him a glare. For a split second he thought he saw Hakira, for the expression matched exactly up to one she had given him on several occasions. Kenpeki, you are the strongest warrior in all of the Soul Society and everyone knows it, but sometimes you have to acknowledge your own strength too. Ichigo pointed to the sky. Believe not in the Soul Society that believes in you, Ichigo pointed to Kenpeki's sword. Believe not in the Kenpeki that believes in your Zanpakuto, he pointed to the captain himself. Believe in the Kenpeki that believes in yourself. You are strong Hitiki, but there will always be someone stronger than you in any world. Perfection is a fantasy. Warriors can always get stronger. If you lose, you must become stronger than the one that defeated you. Challenge them again and defeat them. If you doubt your strength, prove it by becoming stronger. Believe in the power that you have. Hakira's words rang through Kenpeki's mind as he stared Ichigo in the face. What is your name, soldier? Ichigo asked him with a shout. Zaraki, Kenpeki. I can't hear you. Ichigo repeated. Zaraki Kenpeki, Kenpeki repeated, smirking. Louder. Ichigo shouted. My name is Zaraki Kenpeki and I never quit. Kenpeki shouted, rising all the way to his feet. He let out a surge of Ryutsu. Tensou Zanjutsu was forced to shield his master due to Ichigo's weakened state. Ichigo. Kenpeki shouted, staring at him over Tensou Zanjutsu's shoulder with a manic grin, where's everyone else? Ichigo simply smirked. Good to have the old Kenpeki back. And boy do I feel great. Where'd you come up with that pep speech anyway? Kenpeki asked. Ichigo looked to the side and rubbed the back of his head, just something I saw on TV. He looked forward and urged Kenpeki to follow him. Come on. With that, he, Tensou Zanjutsu and Kenpeki walked together to arrive at the strategy meeting in the river garden. Yasuai, Hisuna, Izuru, Momo, Hitsugaya, Renji, Yuna, Susanna, Tissen, Jin, Rangiku, Kyokaku, Yachiroa, Ryu, Yumichika, Nimue, Kayan, Rukia, Vera, and Tatsuki were at assembly along with Kaze no Iriko, Zabumaru, Nijibana and Okate Kimono were also at assembly. From her Zanpakuto's lap, Yachiro leapt to her feet and dashed over to Kenpeki. Kenny. She crawled up onto his shoulder. Glad to see you out and about, Teiko, Yumichika told him. Yes, we could use some good news after what's happened, Hisuna responded. Well, why don't you guys bring me up to speed? Kenpeki requested. Very well, Hisuna responded. She explained to Kenpeki what was going on. She also explained that Yolanda and Kendra were still hunting down the location of everyone's Zanpakuto, and also that Stefan and Naomi were at the division in case of emergency, Stefan to lead the executive militia, and Naomi to relay messages. Yasuai would be the go-between for the entire group and his squad. Anohana and Isane were overlooking patients, including Sasakaibe Kojiro, and Shunsui and Ashido were still going through the archive records trying to find the name Muramasa located somewhere. Mayuri and Nemia were doing research at Hisona's request. Yukatake was simply not feeling well. Well, now that things are peachy keen, what's our next move? Besides delaying the necessity to wave a white flag, of course. Jin asked. Would you stop? Yuna barked back. Hey, I don't see Zaraki's Zanpakuto at his side, do you? I'm telling ya, we're royally fucked. Not only do they got the Zanpakuto of the most powerful man in the Seoul society, but they got the one of the most intelligent one as well, Jin replied. Right, Iin Tamashi, Lelich's Zanpakuto, Hisuna recalled. Having her around will allow them to fabricate plans rather efficiently, Momo put in. Face it, we're sunk, Jin thought. Jin. Zip it. Hisuna glared. Jin brought his thumb and forefinger up to his mouth and turned them as if to simulate locking it shut. Good, Hisuna said, now the next time you open your mouth I want you to tell me what you think Muramasa might do next. Right, well, with Zaraki's Zanpakuto, my guess is that if he hasn't worked out his goals yet, he will soon, and for that to happen he'll leave us alone. What we should be focusing on is locating Kukaki Taiko and Lelich, Jin suggested. Are you sure? Hisuna didn't want to leave anything to chance. Jin racked his brain. Actually there is something else, small chance, but I guess you wanna hear it. If Muramasa's got Iin Tamashi under his command, we might be even more trouble than with Fumetsu Seishin no Senso on the loose. Why do you say that? Hisuna asked. Jin, think about what you're saying, Tissen snapped. What? We're gonna find out about it sooner or later, Jin responded. Jin, spill it. Now. Hisuna glared. Well, yeah, see, Lelich has got this funky ability that lets him control any one person to do anything he wants them to. It's how he killed Aizen, Jin explained. There were whispers all about. And? Hisuna didn't seem fazed. She wanted to hear Jin's point. And, the geese isn't a part of Lelich's Zanpakuto, it's a part of his very soul himself. What if Iin Tamashi's got the same power? What then? If Zaraki's Zanpakuto ain't powerful enough, I'm sure she'll suggest taking control of someone who can, Jin said and pointed to Ichigo. If you were at full strength and under Muramasa's control as well as him having Fumetsu Seishin no Senso, then we'd really be fucked. Hold up a sec, Iin Tamashi can't geese Ichigo. He's already had it used on him, Kyokaku put in. You know about this Kyokaku? Hisuna asked. Lelich told me about it when he was released from jail. He made me swear not to tell anyone about it. It's not a power he's proud of. He confided in me only because he felt he could tell me anything, Kyokaku responded. Why didn't he tell me? I'm the most loyal to him. Susanna thought to herself. He tells Kyokaku, but not his own lieutenant? Taiko, that's not fair, Rangiku humphed. What do you mean by I've already been affected by it? Ichigo asked. Lelich used it on you to keep you from trying to bust you out of jail when he was locked up. The power only works once on any given individual. Rangiku, you've also been subject to it. Lelich wouldn't tell me why, but he did tell me people he's subjected to. Said he trusted me to keep the record safe. Said he knew I wouldn't judge him. But I would never judge Lelich Dano. Well, Rangiku looked over at Jin. I suppose he does have his reasons then. So why can't Iin Tamashi use it on Ichigo? Hitsugaya asked. Iin Tamashi is Lelich's Zanpakuto. She's a part of him and therefore, by extension, technically him as well. It wouldn't work, Kyokaku said. Maybe under normal circumstances, Jin responded. What's that supposed to mean? Kyokaku snapped back. Our Zanpakuto are completely liberated from us right now. It's possible that Iin Tamashi isn't affected by the people Lelich has geased, Jin responded, and now we're really fucked cause if Iin Tamashi is still skulking about it's possible that if she has Lelich's geese, whether he used it on himself or not to make him immune to it, he might be her puppet on strings. Jin's suggestion shocked everyone. Lelich, under his Zanpakuto's control? Momo seemed fearful at the thought. Could that be why he hasn't shown up at all? Renji wondered. Lies. Susanna suddenly sprung to her feet. I don't believe it for 1 second. There's no way that would happen to Lelich Donon. He's not the sort of person who would be undone by such a simple maneuver. Lelich Dono calculates for every possibility and prepares for things in advance. He'd see something like that as a possibility and take countermeasures against it. To even suggest that he would lose to his Zanpakuto and be outsmarted by it is an insult to Lelich Dono's brilliance. You're all fools if you believe even one tiny bit that could happen to him. Susanna then ran away inside, choking back tears. Ah, Susanna, Yuna called after her subordinate. She stood up and looked at Hisuna. I'm going to go calm her down. Hisuna nodded. She's certainly fanatic about him, Renji scratched his head. But she brings up an excellent point, Ichigo enforced, she's right. Lelich wouldn't fall for something that simple. And somehow I know that he's perfectly fine, both him and Byakuya. They're both fine. I'd call that wishful thinking, but speculation is pointless, Tatsuki said in reply. Either way, if Iin Tamashi's target is in fact Ichigo, in his weakened state they'll want to capture him. They'll most likely use Zanpakuto, the most effective at subduing a target. Jin, ideas? Hisuna asked. Well, Tison-san's Zanpakuto is pretty effective in that respect, and for that matter so is my Zanpakuto, if you consider stabbing someone through the chest subduing, Jin responded. Why not my Fukutaiko's Zanpakuto or Yolanda's? Yasuai asked. Way too obvious. This is Lelich's Zanpakuto's brain we're dealing with. Muramasa would try that, but it's obvious he knows better than to do the obvious. Otherwise Zanjutsu-san wouldn't have been the one to fight Yachiro till Okot Kimono-san got materialized. That's a pretty valid point, Hitsugaya affirmed. Then what we have to do is obvious, Hisuna stated, we have to use Ichigo as bait and make this plan backfire. You're sure that'll work? What if the suspect's something? Renji asked. If it were Lelich he'd know we'd try that, but I don't think Iin Tamashi is as careful a devil at cutting the holes out of her plans, Jin said. Either way it won't matter cause we'll know soon enough. Tison-san and I will shadow Kurosaka-san as he skulks about the Siriti tonight. Everyone else should hold up a watch at the Kukaki Manor, Squad 10 and Squad 6 in case Lelich or Kukaki Teiko come by. Let's also send out some search parties tonight as well. Today has not been a good day for us and we can use this time to plan, Hisuna said. Everyone nodded their heads in agreement. That evening, as planned, Jin and Tison were intended to shadow Ichigo and fight their Zanpakuto. Jin suspected that one of the Zanpakuto would escape and one of them would stay and fight. Regardless of which one that was, it would be obvious that Ichigo would pursue. At that point Rangiku, Momo, Kyokaku, and Isane would all shadow Ichigo since Jin predicted Ichigo would lose track of the fleeing Zanpakuto, but continue to follow the trail nonetheless. Jin figured there'd be plenty of Zanpakuto skulking about at that point and he largely suspected Kyokaku, Isane, Rangiku, and Momo to be the ones skulking about. After all, they were people Lelich trusted without being too obvious and Jin suspected Iin Tamashi might not be so willing to put Yogo Kaikai, Reimei Inoto, or Tekubikiri Tamashi in danger since he knew her master was rather attached to their masters. Renji and Ryu were assigned to the 6th Division. Hisuna assigned herself and Rukia to the Kukaki Manor. And Susanna and Yuna were assigned to Division 10. Everyone else was asked to go about their business as if things weren't as tense as they were. At Division 10, Yuna and Susanna began ransacking Lelich's office for clues to his whereabouts, Yuna's idea. It worked with Mari, she figured Lelich might do the same thing for her and Susanna, or whoever was clever enough to look. However, she and Susanna came up empty. Both women sighed in defeat, realizing they couldn't find anything. This is so frustrating. This isn't like him at all. Lelich is supposed to leave details with at least one captain if he's up to something. Anohana told me that he's going to get in trouble. Yuna stressed. Teiko, relax, we'll find him. We'll. A horrific thought passed through Susanna's mind. What if we have to find him? What if Iin Tamashi didn't kill Lelouch Dano? What if she just dragged him off and left him for dead somewhere? He could be hurt really badly waiting for someone to come find him. Yuna suddenly slapped her. Teiko. You're getting hysterical, Susanna, Yuna said to her. How can you be so calm about all of this? Doesn't Lelouch Dano mean anything to you? You're marrying him like I am, aren't you? Susanna asked. Of course I am, but I'm not about to lose my cool over it. I was Mari-sama's vice captain for 95 years before Lelouch came into our lives. She left me behind before and would tell me not to worry about her. I loved her very much and I care about Lelouch as well, but I know he's out there somewhere and I know he's not dead or dying. Yuna put her hands on Susanna's shoulders. We'll find him, Susanna, okay? Yuna asked her and then noticed something down by the ground as she looked out of the corner of her eye over her lieutenant's shoulder. Huh? What's that? Yuna moved past Susanna and knelt down on the ground by Lelouch's bookshelf. She moved some books to the side, revealing a safe behind it. Well now. What's this? Yuna was hopeful. She saw the combo turn lock and the keypad. Knowing Lelouch, he probably made this complicated, Yuna said, thinking of how to open it. Maybe it's meant to be opened by two people. The two he trusts the most, Susanna thought. That would be you and Nimue, or you and me, or you and Kyokaku, Yuna theorized. Maybe it's all four of us. Maybe the keypad has our seats and the combo lock our squad numbers, Susanna theorized. Worth a try, Yuna shrugged. Of course, the moment she hit a single button, the squad alarm began going off and suddenly keto barriers began covering everything except the floors of the office. Intruder alert. Intruder alert. Unauthorized access. Proceeding to remove hostiles from office. The security camera in Lelouch's office saw Yuna and Susanna and then decided to turn on the sprinkler system, forcing both women out of the office and into the hallway shrieking, but the sprinklers would go on and off until both were chased out of the barracks. Ayah! This sucks! Susanna shouted, covering her head with her arms. Lelouch, you jerk! Yuna shouted as both escaped outside, panting. Once both women calmed down, Yuna got angry again. What kind of idiot rigs his safe like that? I touched one button. One button. How does he open it? Because he's the only one who can do, a voice called out from the distance. Yuna and Susanna snapped their heads around. From the shadows stepped out a red-haired, olive-eyed woman. Iin Tamashi, Susanna recognized her, calling her name with anger. My, such ire. Is it because I betrayed your precious Lelouch Dano that you respond to me with such hatred? Where is he? Yuna asked, going for her sword. Wouldn't you like to know? Iin Tamashi asked. Yes, we would, Susanna responded. So sorry to say, but I can't let you meet him right now. Iin Tamashi held out both her hands and lifted Susanna and Yuna into the air. But Lelouch Dano can only use telekinesis in Bankai, Susanna cried. I'm not Lelouch now, am I? Iin Tamashi asked with a small grin, and now that I have you two right where I want you, the geese emblem flashed in her eye, you're going to do exactly as I say. Susanna and Yuna both then lost their immediate memory as Iin Tamashi gave her command. Meanwhile at the 6th Division, Ichigo was walking by the division area with Renji and Ryu watching him go by from high atop the barracks gates, both with binoculars aimed at the entrance. This stakeout is going to take all night, Ryu complained. Hey, be thankful you're with me at least. Otherwise. Before Renji could finish his sentence, a swift chop came to the back of his neck, knocking him out. Renji, what's? Ryu soon fell to the same fate and their mysterious attacker moved on without a trace farther into the division. Ichigo, as he walked by, with Tensou Zanjutsu at his side, stopped for a moment and looked around, trying to decipher what caused the disturbance in his senses, but then turned away from the division gates. What's the matter? Tensou Zanjutsu asked. Ichigo shook his head. Nothing, I thought I sensed something, Ichigo stated. Your senses are sharper than mine then, I didn't pick up anything, Tensou Zanjutsu said. No, it's probably just my Ryutsu, Ichigo stated, you're close enough to me after all. Yes, I suppose that's true, Tensou Zanjitsu said. Anyway, let's keep moving. Hisuna-san said she wanted us to keep making a circuit around the barracks gates until something happened, Ichigo said. Tensou Zanjitsu nodded. The two headed forward, but stopped when they both heard clomping footsteps, like the plodding dashing of dogs, but what came up behind them weren't canines but Yuna and Susanna. Both began running circles around Ichigo on all fours for a few moments, confusing him before they started, barking at both of them. What are you two doing? This is no time for games. You're supposed to be at the 10th division. Ichigo pointed. They don't appear to be quite themselves, Tensou Zanjitsu stated. What? Ichigo gasped, but that means... A cackling laugh sounded through the area and from behind Yuna and Susanna Iin Tamashi appeared as she floated a few inches off the ground. Iin Tamashi, Ichigo grit his teeth, what did you do to them? Oh nothing really, Iin Tamashi smiled giddily as she put her fingers by her lower lip, they're my master's pets after all. I felt their personalities should reflect such so I commanded them to act as such. You're sick, Tensou Zanjitsu spat. Oh sick I am indeed. I've got geese fever, Iin Tamashi said and was about to use her geese on Tensou Zanjitsu and Ichigo when a command seemed to be given to her from somewhere Ichigo and Tensou Zanjitsu could not notice. What? I should lure them out. She asked in confirmation, tilting her head up and pressing her fingers to her ear. Who's she talking to? Ichigo wondered. Things were silent for a moment. Very well, she smiled at Tensou Zanjitsu and Ichigo. Change of plans boys, do you want to know where my master is? Of course we do. Where is he? Ichigo shouted. Follow me then, Iin Tamashi wrapped herself up in her cape and appeared behind Tensou Zanjitsu and Ichigo. Follow me boys, and you too Yuna-chan, Susanna-chan, she looked up to the sky. That goes for all of you. If you want to see my master, then follow me. Iin Tamashi took off. Hey. Wait. Ichigo chased her down. Tensou Zanjitsu and Susanna and Yuna, still acting like dogs followed. As the plan was to shadow Ichigo, Jin, and the others had no choice, but to follow. Well your plan backfired miserably, Momo snarked at Jin. Yeah I noticed, Jin didn't seem to be in a jolly mood. What's she up to? What's her goal? Rangiku asked. Wish I could answer Yaran-chan, Jin answered. This has trap written all over it, Kyokaku stated, you know that right? Well we gotta spring the trap, Jin replied, even if we know dat, Kurosaka-san's gonna dive headfirst into it no matter what we say. Do you think Lelich-kun is really alright? Isane asked Jin. Jin held out the vowel sound for a few seconds, probably. That does not beget confidence, Tissen replied. Never mind that, heads up. Momo shouted. A large flaming fireball came blasting their way. The group scattered only for a bunch of landmines to go off, further separating them. Each member of the shadow group was soon face to face with their own Zanpakuto. Well that was easier than shooting fish in a barrel. Right Kyokaku? Kyode Bakuden asked her as he juggled an ice bomb in his non-armored arm. So, tell me, what's your excuse? Kyokaku asked. What? You mean for leaving ya? Kyode Bakuden asked. Oh it's simple really, he said and then frowned, it's cause we didn't meet up 90% #$ ending years ago. He threw the ice bomb at Kyokaku and it exploded, but she dodged. How in the hell do you talk in symbols? She asked. Hey, I am not blamed for have a swearing censor, Kyode Bakuden replied and then shouted, Ka-ed yoteho. He blasted Kyokaku as she floated in the air and the explosion hit a Honden-type gate. You know for a maple leaf cannon I can't really see myself making pancakes with it. While Kyokaku dealt with her Zanpakuto's insanity, Momo had kept on Tabayam like a stalker and now was in a clearing, surrounded by bending trees against her. You kept up with me pretty well Momo. I'm impressed. Tabayam, why are you doing this? I thought you liked the fact that I had grown less naive. You told me it was a good thing. Why then did you leave me? Momo asked. Because you're still so pathetic, Tabayam said with a stuck-up smirk, you're quick to fall apart and you still break down into a sobbing mess. You're not hardened, Momo. You were once, and you let Aizen shake your resolve. In the next moment Tobiam soon found the entire part of her hair beneath her left shoulder cut off as Momo struck fiercely towards him. You will not mention that name to me again. Momo turned around and flared her riot so, do you hear me? While Momo got incredibly angry, Rangiku was now caught up with Hanko on a raised walkway about 30 meters up off the ground. You move pretty fast for an old hag, Hanko taunted. Old hag, Rangiku twitched. Yeah, you're starting to get wrinkles, Rangiku. It's no wonder your captain doesn't want anything to do with an old prune like you. I'll skin you alive. Rangiku shouted and prepared for battle. Aizen followed Itagumo out to a pond where her Zanpakuto touched her foot to the pond and the whole thing froze. This will make a perfect battlefield, don't you think? She asked. Itagumo, why? Why are you doing this? Aizen asked. It's cause you're so insecure about everything, Itagumo smiled darkly. She levitated off of the ground. A frosty aura exuded from her hands and feet. You need to be more confident in yourself and not be so flustered. You need to chillax once in a while, Aizen. Itagumo said, and then blasted a frosty gale at her master. Jin had followed Shinso back to the 6th Division gates. Shinso stared at him with a dull glare from afar. You still look mighty fine as ever, Shinso. You caught me off guard once. Jin held up his blade. Not gonna happen again. You're going to fight without even wondering why I left? Shinso asked. What does it matter? I gotta get ya back, don't I? Jin asked. So you have no interest in changing who you are? Shinso asked. Jin pondered the question for a moment before resuming a battle stance. Nah, not really. I see, then let me tell you that is why I left you, master. You have strayed so far from what you were. Everything we once did was for Rangiku, but you took it to an extreme and I was not pleased with that, Shinso stated. Don't care, Jin said and warped behind Shinso and attacked. He missed. Shinso continued to talk, you've changed, Jin. You weren't always like this. Yeah, I know, Jin said as he stood behind Shinso, I grew up. He stabbed his Zanpakuto in the back. Let me tell ya something. If we Soul Reapers are supposed to accept you Zanpakuto for what you are, then you gotta accept me for me, you got that? Jin, Shinso turned to look at his master and held up his nails, I will never understand you, I don't think. Shoot to kill, his fingernails launched out like blades. Jin leapt back. Oh well, Jin said with a big smile, guess I gotta make you understand den. Tison had no idea where he was. All he could hear was the buzzing off Suzumushi's wings and the rapid fire of blades being sent out at him via his second ability, Bani Hiko. Tell me, Suzumushi, why have you defected? I was shown the light by Lelich. I stopped myself from making a huge mistake. I am atoning for what I have done. What is it that you see wrong with that? Tison asked. Nothing, but that's not why I left, Suzumushi replied in her mature, feminine voice and attacked Tison with her claw. He dodged back and found himself standing on air. Then why did you leave? Tison asked. I left for the same reason you fight, for justice. Not all the Zanpakuto hate our masters, some of us simply believe in Muramasa's cause, Suzumushi replied. I see, now I understand. You believe we Soul Reapers have abused you, as Muramasa said. Tison held up his blade in the direction he could hear Suzumushi's buzzing, then I will open your eyes to the path of true justice. For you see, separating Zanpakuto and Soul Reaper weakens both. Our bond is not of master and servant, it is one of synergy and trust. We are two sides of the same coin. We are strengthened by one another. In return for freeing you from the loneliness you must face and giving you life when we become Soul Reapers, in exchange you tell us how to awaken our latent abilities. That's how I perceive it, Tison said. Trust? Loneliness? You're starting to sound like Yogo Kaikai, Suzumushi scoffed. What does Homura-san's Zanpakuto have to do with this? Tison asked. Oh, nothing, forget I said anything, Suzumushi replied, let's just fight. With the 6 Shadowers now locked in battle with their Zanpakuto, Ichigo, Tensou Zanjutsu, Yuna, and Susanna followed Iin Tamashi until they reached a patch of old ruins. Zanjitsu was standing by them. Zanjitsu! Ichigo shouted. I see, so it was a trick after all. Tensou Zanjitsu called for his sword. I'm not here to fight. I am waiting for Muramasa, Zanjitsu replied. Why are you talking about him as if he's suddenly your boss? Ichigo shouted. Because he is, Iin Tamashi responded. Zanjitsu is the second in command of this rebellion, chosen by our master because of his great power and loyalty, she chuckled, and I was chosen to become the tactician. After all, I am the Zanpakuto of the most brilliant mind in the Soul Society. Based on who was following you, you thought we'd try to capture you and have your shadowers attacked by their own Zanpakuto? We don't need to capture you, Ichigo. In fact, capturing you would prove pointless until you and Zanjitsu do battle. Then why bring us out here? I'll ask again, where is Lelouch? Tensou Zanjitsu asked. He'll be here, Iin Tamashi replied, but first, her hands glowed violet, let's have some fun. Iin Tamashi with a grunt threw a fireball at Ichigo and Tensou Zanjitsu, twisting her body to throw each one. Acting on canine instinct, Yuna and Susanna dodged out of the way and stood by a tree, both whimpering and looking scared. Angered at seeing the two women reduced to such a state, Ichigo attacked Iin Tamashi furiously. She blocked with her kite shields. Yes, that's it, she laughed, show me your anger. Give me your hate. She then telekinetically threw Ichigo towards the nearby pond. Angered at seeing his master injured, Tensou Zanjitsu attacked Iin Tamashi. Getsuga Tensho. Talk to the hand, Iin Tamashi said, holding up her hand and producing a full body barrier. Tensou Zanjitsu's attack didn't even create a crack. That's impossible, Tensou Zanjitsu turned wide-eyed. Is it really? Iin Tamashi asked. You've been separated from your other half TZ, though you wield your signature katana you no longer have the power of a Bankai. Iin Tamashi grabbed Tensou Zanjitsu with her telekinesis and slammed him into the ground. Ichigo came roaring back at Iin Tamashi, but she blasted a fireball in his chest and he was sent away. Zanjitsu stood silently on the sidelines. He said Muramasa would show up at this exact spot right about now, so where is he? Zanjitsu asked. If you want to turn Hun, you let me know, Iin Tamashi said, looking in Zanjitsu's direction. You're hitting on my Zanpakuto? Ichigo asked, kind of creeped out by the idea. Oh, I wasn't talking to Zanjitsu, Iin Tamashi said as she used her telekinesis to throw Tensou Zanjitsu at Ichigo. Was I YK? From behind the ruins a blonde, silver-eyed woman, with multicolored armor stepped out from the shadows. Yuna began barking energetically, recognizing the individual. After all, it was her Zanpakuto. I'm good, Iin, Yogo Kaikai said, have your fun. Yuna attempted to happily dash towards her Zanpakuto, but Susanna bit her hair and tugged her back. She yipped at her, trying to tell Yuna in dog speak that it was dangerous. While the two talked to each other with barks and yips, all it did was frustrate Ichigo even further to see a captain and vice-captain like that. Ichigo, dear, you hardly even know them, lighten up, Iin Tamashi chuckled. Shut up. Ichigo shouted as he and Zanjitsu attacked her at the same time. Iin Tamashi's full circle barrier protected her. Personal space, boys, she then expanded the barrier to force Ichigo and Tensou Zanjitsu back. Ichigo and Tensou Zanjitsu were about to charge again, but a garganta suddenly opened and Muramasa tumbled out, blood in his eyes, coughing. Muramasa! Ichigo shouted and charged at him, but Zanjitsu and Yogo Kaikai blocked off Muramasa with their shikais. Quit defending him! Ichigo shouted at Zanjitsu. Zanjitsu simply silently glared. Zanjitsu? Yogo Kaikai. Muramasa was surprised to see them both. It was Iin Tamashi's idea that we both be here, Yogo Kaikai responded. I see, you have my thanks, he told her. It's not a problem, Iin Tamashi said. Things were then very silent for a few moments before she frowned. She then threw her arms out and then threw her arms out at her side, exasperated. And now that we have our master back and you two are separated. It's time I used my power on you. Iin Tamashi lifted up Ichigo and Tensou Zanjitsu and held them in front of her. Now what should I do with you both? So many ideas, Iin Tamashi laughed, the possibilities are endless. She began to laugh like mad, but suddenly felt a presence on her shoulder and was thrown to the ground. Ichigo pushed himself up off the ground and his eyes widened as to his view. He was staring at a Haori and it had the number 10 on it. Ichigo became elated. Lelouch. Yuna and Susanna began barking happily. Lelouch turned to look over his shoulder and smiled kindly. Lelouch, Ichigo got to his feet. You're okay? Of course I'm okay, Lelouch said and turned to face Ichigo. He then stared at Susanna and Yuna and shouted, awake. Yuna and Susanna suddenly snapped to their senses. Both were a little disoriented. Susanna was the first to say something. Huh? How did we get all the way out here? Never mind that, look. Yuna pointed. Susanna became excited. Lelouch Dano. She began to run towards him. If this scene were an anime, she'd be running in slow motion. Lelouch Dano. Susanna cried happily as she ran towards him to give him a big hug. Lelouch was smiling kindly all throughout her misty-eyed sprint towards him, but as she neared him his smile turned demonic and when she was within range, backhand slapped her across the face and knocked her to the ground. Lelouch, what the hell? Ichigo shouted. Did you really think I'd come to save you? Lelouch asked. My plan worked flawlessly. You all fell for it hook, line and sinker. Plan. Lelouch, what are you talking about? Yuna demanded to know. Oh, nothing much, Lelouch said putting his hand up by his eye. I guess you can just say I've switched sides, that's all. That's all? Lelouch, what the hell are you doing? Yuna asked. As I've always done, Yuna my darling, justice. Lelouch held out his hand. You call smacking your future wife justice? Yuna asked. I believe it was Aizen who once preached that loyalty is not the same as understanding, Lelouch said with dark grin. You would dare to even mention that man? Yuna scowled intensely. Lelouch, what's gotten into you? Ichigo asked. I've simply decided that what Muramasa said is true. The Zanpakuto need to be freed from us. Instead of controlling them, we should live in harmony with them. That's what I've decided to do, Lelouch said. Then why throw her to the ground? Ichigo asked. Because she strayed from the plan, Lelouch said. We still need you Ichigo and if she geases you, I can't undo what she does, that's all. Sorry, if I was a little forceful. Lelouch looked down at Iin Tamashi. No, it's okay, I'm okay. Iin Tamashi stood up and dusted herself off. Jin was right, Iin Tamashi controlling your mind isn't she? That's why you're acting like this? Right Lelouch? Ichigo asked with a manic grin. That has to be the case right? You would never do this on your own. I mean Zero's one thing, but you're betraying the Soul Society. Betrayal, Lelouch said and ran his hand through his hair. Yes, I suppose that's how it would look from where you're standing. And just what would you call it then? Yuna wanted to know. I call it two simple words really. I see this situation as nothing more than a game of soul chess, Lelouch responded. Lelouch, What? Going to cry because I misled you? Lelouch asked. It doesn't have to be this way you know Ichigo. Lelouch extended his hand to Ichigo. Join me Ichigo. We can shape a new world together. I cannot believe you'd even ask such a thing. Ichigo was outraged. You know, I really looked up to you Lelouch. You're almost 10 times older than I am, but you don't look that much older than me. Ichigo shouted. I always thought we were friends. Friends? Lelouch asked finding Ichigo's statement absurd and then looked at Ichigo and Yuna with a dull glare. I have no friends. Yuna became enraged. She yanked out her Zanpakuto and attacked Lelouch head-on. You dim bastard. Lelouch snapped his fingers with one hand and held up his hand with the other, dispelling the second layer of the Kyoko spell, revealing he had been in Bankai the entire time. His barrier blocked Yuna completely and pushed her off. You would dare to fight me, Yuna? Don't be ridiculous. Susanna tilted her head up to look at the man she loved. Lelouch Dano, why? I already answered that, Lelouch said tilting his head. Ichigo. Yuna shouted at him. Yeah, Ichigo pulled out his sword. Tensou Zanjutsu did the same. Lelouch laughed at the absurdity of the situation. You all have the audacity to challenge me? Do you who you face? I am Zero. The man who creates whole worlds and, Lelich took a dramatic pause and thrust out his arm, the man who destroys them. To be continued. Chapter 99, Lelich's Reasons. Third-person POV. Lelich laughed, you have the audacity to challenge me? Do you know who you face? I am Zero, the man who creates worlds. Lelich thrust his arm forward and charged a fireball, and the man who destroys them. The blast went off aiming directly for Ichigo. Tensou Zanjutsu sliced it out of the way. Yuna used her flash step and reappeared behind Lelich to attack him, but with the use of his own flash step he took to the air. Hado 33, Sakasui, Lelich blasted the blue fire crash down at his former comrades. Yuna dodged, but Ichigo threw himself into the line of fire to grab Susanna and put her down at a safer location. Lelich lowered himself to the ground, how noble to save the life of someone you barely know. Lelich, I know you're better than this, Ichigo glared at him. Ichigo, you don't know me at all. The captains predating my inauguration know who I am and what I am capable of. You do not, Lelich said and prepared another fireball, don't even try to guilt me. It won't work. The fireball blasted at Ichigo. He dodged easily. You will not escape me. Lelich activated his telekinesis and, predicting Yuna to attack his left flank, used Ichigo as a meat shield before dropping him and leaping back to dodge Tensou Zanjutsu's strike from above. It's difficult to take me on when I know practically every move you would make before you even make it. Who was it that taught you how to fight properly, Ichigo? And Yuna, do you think I never spent all the time in the world watching your skill set as well? Lelich, Yuna grit her teeth. Face it, neither of you can attack me because both of you still trust me. I, fortunately, have no such emotional ties, Lelich said, and his hand glowed black as he crossed his right arm over his body and prepared to snap his fingers. Hado 90, Lelich said casually and then drew his arm back across his body and snapped his fingers, Kuro Hitsuji. The black coffin formed up upon Ichigo, Yuna, Tensou Zanjutsu, and Susanna simultaneously, but the attack was severely underpowered. Without the incantation, the power of the attack wasn't nearly controlled enough for Lelich to inflict any serious damage. In fact, with Susanna lying flat on the ground, she was the least affected. She watched though as Ichigo, Yuna, and Tensou Zanjutsu were lacerated immensely. And now she was alone on the battlefield. Lelich took one look at her and then prepared to leave with the Zanpakuto. Lelich, Dono, Susanna got up. Lelich had hit her pretty hard and his Ryutsu was crushing her thanks to the fluked Hado 90, but she wasn't about to let that stop her from doing something. What she intended to do, however, was not something Ichigo or Yuna were going to like. Lelich Dono, please take me with you. She pleaded. Lelich looked over his shoulder at Susanna, why would you want to come with me? I am your enemy. He told her. You're never my enemy, Lelich Dono, Susanna said, dragging her heels, no matter what side you stand on, I always want to be with you. I love you more than life itself. I don't want to be without you. I see, Lelich said. She truly is loyal to me and that's what makes what I have to do all the more painful. I'm sorry Susanna, but I simply don't have a use for you anymore. Lelich raised his arm behind his cape and aimed it through the cape itself, Hado 4, Byakurai. The pale lightning blasted through his cape and into Susanna's abdomen, wounding her. Susanna put her hand on her stomach and continued to follow after him. Susanna, stop. Yuna called from the ground. It was obvious to her that Lelich intended to kill Susanna if she continued to act like this. There was no way he would allow her to come with him. You would persist? Lelich asked. I shot you and yet you still look at me with those eyes as if I am a deity. Why do you look at me with such eyes even now? Because I love you, Susanna stumbled forward, you were always nice to me, she staggered forward, and since then, I've just wanted nothing more than to be at your side. The blood seemed through her corset and was now dripping onto the ground. If you believe that siding with the Zanpakuto is right thing to do, then that is what the right thing to do is. I believe in you. I always will. I will always take your side. Susanna's eyes filled with tears, even if you yourself reject me. I will not reject you. Susanna's wound took its toll and she began to fall forward. Yuna was surprised when Lelich rushed forward and, rather than letting Susanna hit the ground, caught her and let her fall into him. Susanna was still conscious for the moment. Lelich whispered to her. If that is what you believe, then come with me, Susanna, we will face the future together. Susanna smiled, Lelich Dono, she then passed out. Lelich carried the passed-out girl in her arms bridal style. We'll take her back with us. As you plainly heard, she has heard the voice of reason and wishes to join us. What about Shinso and the others? Zanjitsu asked. They are expendable. After all, if the Zanpakuto can be subjugated by their Soul Reaper, then it is a sign of their weak will to be free, Lelich responded. Muramasa, Lelich walked towards the Zanpakuto. Let's go and create that world you envisioned. Such an interesting man, Muramasa thought to himself, he reminds me of Koga in many ways. Yes, let us go. Before they could all finish leaving, however, Ichigo got up. He was staring at the ground, his hair covering his eyes. His blade was pointed at the ground. You'll age if you turn back, he said. Tensou Zanjitsu looked up from the ground, noticing Ichigo's rise in Ryutsu and the heaviness of his own form. What is he doing? Hesitate and you will die, Ichigo, without lifting up his head, held up his blade. He took a practice swing and his Ryutsu flared a bright blue color. When you dodge, you don't let them cut you. When you protect someone, you don't let them die. Zanjitsu stopped and turned back to face his former master, closing his eyes a bit, interested in Ichigo's stance. When you attack, Ichigo lifted his head, you kill. And so, protect. Zanjitsu. A bright flash of blue light took hold of Ichigo's Zanpakuto and it transformed into the blade's Shikai form. Tensou Zanjitsu could feel his energy fading as Ichigo began drawing on it. Never give up, never surrender. He held up his sword, Getsuga Tensho. A blast more powerful than any Ichigo had ever fired from his Shikai rocketed towards the Zanpakuto with intense force, but was directed at Lelich. Unfortunately, Shikai would only get him so far. Iin Tamashi stood in front of the blast with her barrier projected and her cape in front of her to protect her. The attack didn't even faze her. Ichigo was then left panting like a dog. I have to do something, Tensou Zanjitsu said and willed his body to quickly draw on Ichigo's remaining Ryutsu. He couldn't let Ichigo's hollow take control. Doing so though caused them both to pass out. Iin Tamashi then lowered her guard and turned around again. That attack was monstrous, Lelich gaped. Even though Iin Tamashi was able to stop it, that was unlike anything I've ever seen Ichigo do. He smirked from underneath his helmet. Be strong, Ichigo, the others will need your strength. Yuna, still conscious, was the next to get up. Yogo Kaikai. She shouted at her Zanpakuto. You always told me that as long as I had you I was never truly alone. You said I could always trust you. We've been through so much. Without turning back at her, Yogo Kaikai spoke. If you want me back, Yuna, then you must prove yourself to once again be worthy of my power. I'll take you on if your intention is to force me back, but you're in no condition to fight. Besides, are you denying me my freedom? Do you think that the man you love is wrong? You did attack him after all. Your heart is full of doubt. I can sense it. Before you can even think of challenging me, you must erase that doubt. Yogo Kaikai then marched to the front of the group. Yuna, as she watched everyone go, eventually fell forward, passed out. Meanwhile, everyone else was fiercely locked in combat with their Zanpakuto. Momo was currently with the strongest will as she agilely dodged every attack Tabayam launched at her and struck with ferocity that would surprise anyone to see her doing so, but most of all surprising Tabayam. You sure are dedicated, I'll give you that, Tabayam told her former master, but you're still a naive girl. You may understand how the world works, sunk into darkness, but your resolve is easily broken. You depend upon those around you only standing up on your own when pushed. Where is your resolve, Momo? My resolve, Momo glared, is here. The next thing Tabayam knew, Momo was behind her, sword in Tabayam's back, protruding from between her breasts. Tabayam twitched, barely able to move. My weak will, what you see, what everyone sees, it's all a facade. With Aizen I should have known better, but I won't lose to the weakness of my heart again. All I know is that Sensei needs me and Toshiro needs me to be strong. I will fight even if you will not fight at my side any longer. Lelich has taught me that we must be willing to sacrifice anything to achieve our goals, and in order to keep living as I like, I am willing to sacrifice even you to buy him, Momo told her. I get, she gagged, that. She faded into Reishi and retreated into Momo's sword. Momo took a breath of relief. I should go check up on the others. As she took off, Rangiku was still duking it out with Hanko. The nimble cat girl was continuously taunting Rangiku, calling her old and expired like weak old milk. All it did was push Rangiku's buttons. As she took another swing at Hanko, the cat leapt over her head and kicked her in the back of the head before blasting her former master in the back with her ash, tearing open her Shiakusho. Rangiku turned around as she bled from her back to face off against her Zanpakuto. You know, you used to be a real looker, but that was back when you still looked 19. You look old enough to be Lelich's mother, you know. When's the last time you actually turned him on, or anyone for that matter? Hanko insulted. I'm tired of your insults. I look damn good, Rangiku snapped. You've always been rude and selfish, but I didn't know you were such a brat. Only to you, Hanko chimed in response. A little of what you said is true though, Rangiku said, holding up her blade. I know that I'm not going to have my looks forever. But no matter how I look, I'm still me. My appearance doesn't matter. No matter your looks, anyone can be beautiful. Yawn, Hanko opened her mouth and waved her hand towards it, bored with Rangiku's speech. Are you going to prattle off life lessons Lelich taught you, or are we going to fight? I don't know, Rangiku said with a smirk. You could have attacked at any time. Now it was Hanko's turn to get angry. She hissed and pounced towards Rangiku. Hado 58, 10 ran. She blasted the windy gale at Hanko, blowing her away and disorienting her. Rangiku then pushed down her legs to the ground and sprung up to attack Hanko, taking her by surprise and cut her along her torso. Hanko retaliated by scratching at Rangiku, but her former master used Shunpo to disappear and reappeared atop a tree limb. Hanko dropped to the ground. You know, I'm starting to realize something. What's that? Hanko asked with a dull gaze, ignoring her injury. You Zanpakuto might have our abilities, but we still have the advantage in the other arts, Rangiku said and proceeded to toss away her Zanpakuto, like so. She threw me away? Hanko was so surprised by Rangiku's action she wasn't even ready when Rangiku punched her in her injury. Hanko doubled over in pain. That's another thing you don't have, our amplified endurance. If that were me, I wouldn't be dropping to the ground like you are now. If I were an Aaron Carr, I would have taken your head off instead talking it off. Hanko simply dug her nails into the ground. When were you so smart and resourceful? Rangiku simply let fly another smug smirk and picked Hanko by the back of her shirt as she had once done to Toshiro more than 30 years ago. I'm not the lieutenant of Squad 10 because Lelich is interested in my looks or just because we know each other. I'm more than just a pretty face, even if you beg to differ. I have the qualifications to be a vice captain. And that's why, I'm going to take you back. You might have your looks and your appeal, but you don't have the power to contend with me. Hanko with an annoyed glare scratched Rangiku across the face. Oh, that is it, I have had it with you. Rangiku broke out into a fit of rage similar to Hisona's when she attacked Kaze no Iriko. Rangiku put Hanko down, stomped on her back, pulled her tail and wrapped it around her Zanpakuto's legs. Ow! You know that really hurts, Hanko complained. Haven't you heard of cruelty to animals? So what, are you an animal or a beautiful woman? You can't have both, Rangiku stated. If you want the pain to go away, all you gotta do is come back. But I don't wanna, Hanko whined, looking like a child complaining to their parent. Well, I suppose I could change your mind, Rangiku said and went over and picked up a stick. What are you going to do with that? Hanko asked. You're me and I'm you, Rangiku said, and all of a sudden her smile became pretty scary. So that means you must have all of my bizarre fetishes as well. We're in public. What are you thinking? Hanko shouted. Iin Tamashi made it pretty clear that no tactic is too dirty, Rangiku said, wobbling the stick. If humiliation is what it's going to take, then you can be certain I'm going to do everything I can, Rangiku emphasized the last 4 syllables. Okay, I yield, just take that away from me and my nether regions. Hanko pleaded. You promise, Cause you know what'll happen if you double-cross me, Rangiku hummed. Yes. Yes. I yield. No amount of trying to compete with Iin Tamashi of who's more popular is worth that kind of humiliation. I yield, I swear. Hanko was so not desiring Rangiku sticking that stick where it shouldn't be and moving it until she couldn't take it anymore. Alright, Rangiku tossed the stick away. She went over to get her Zanpakuto. She pointed it at Hanko. Now go back in. I don't know how, Hanko stated, I mean, other than being killed sort of kind of I see, Rangiku put her blade away, well at the very least can you give me back your power so I can use it? Hanko didn't know how to do that either. Well, I suppose there's no helping it. I'm going to have to drain your energy. And just how do you intend to do that? Hanko asked. Rangiku undid the knot Hanko did to her legs and then grabbed Hanko's shirt and prepared to lift it off her. Hanko quickly sprung to her feet and prepared to pull it down. What are you doing? There's only way I know that'll drain your energy quickly, Rangiku said. No. Absolutely not. No way. Hands off. Hanko crossed her arms over her body to make an X. You don't have a choice Hanko, Rangiku chuckled, Bakudo-one, sigh. Hanko was forced into the helpless position and Rangiku bent down at her Zanpakuto's side and grabbed her tail stroking it softly. Hanko's face turned red as her tail stuck straight up. That feels funny, she complained, stop it. Rangiku ignored her and she would continue to ignore her until Hanko lost it. I hate you. Hanko shouted. Meanwhile, Kyokaku was doing her best to contend with her blue-costumed, eye-patched Zanpakuto. She couldn't use his power, but Shiba Kyokaku was more than just a Soul Reaper. From her cleavage she pulled out a small smoke bomb and threw it at her Zanpakuto. It exploded and Kyokaku dashed through the smoke and punched her Zanpakuto in the face. He went spiraling away, but quickly fixed his stance. Hey, present for ya. He threw an electric bomb at Kyokaku. She leapt away only for her Zanpakuto to appear upside down behind her. Tell Hirako not to sue Mike. He said as he flipped right side up and kicked Kyokaku in the back into the ground. She slid along the ground, but rolled forward and got to her feet. Her Zanpakuto was already standing in front of her. You know I'm really sure the fanboys would love you with dirt on your chest, but perhaps you should take your top off, that would really make them go wild. Oh wait, this is a fanfiction so they can't see you. Kyokaku face-palmed, why are you so retarded? She grumbled. That's a good question Kyokaku, and one with an easy answer. Kyode Bakuden ran away and came back with a chalkboard. He didn't draw anything even roughly interesting, but just squiggly lines as he spoke. You see, you had me when you first tried to get into the academy, but you stopped being a Soul Reaper during your 4th year, so I simmered for 90% dollar and hashtagging years. Kaed Yoteho. Kyode Bakuden offhandedly blasted the board away. As you can imagine Kyokaku, it's really strenuous on the mind when you start developing a personality, but not a body, and your owner neglects you for years and years and years, refusing to talk to you, use you, or become a full-fledged Soul Reaper. I got shelved, sitting in my scabbard for almost a century until you picked me back up. A man gets to do a lot of thinking when he's motionless for nearly a century, existing as little more than a free-floating consciousness. I had one sensation during all that time, itching. $90 # ending years of itching. Kyode Bakuden began jitterbugging his hands all around his body. I had no nose to wiggle or a hand to move. I'm sure that's what death feels like if you scored low on your sats, so stay in school kids. Kyode Bakuden put his arms down at his sides and then pointed his index finger underhand at Kyokaku. So because of you and all that itching I sat there, and eventually you decided to take me back into your life. But by that point I had already become so crazy that I'm now all of the untapped insanity you don't use. Did I mention I also know about this American college student that sits as his computer at night typing up our existence? What planet is America on? Kyokaku asked. Oh yeah, I forget, they didn't win the Revolutionary War, did they? Kyode Bakuden scratched the back of his head. Whatever, he shrugged, enough, chit-chat. Let's make things go boom. He threw a bomb at Kyokaku. Fastball special. Kyokaku, rather than dodge or block, punched the bomb back at her Zanpakuto. Kyode Bakuten winced with his good eye. Oh, phooey. The explosion was seen by Jin all the way from the 6th Division gates. Oh, fireworks. How nice. He then heard the sound of blood splatter as Shinso crawled towards him. The Zanpakuto had been brutally ripped apart by his former master. Unlike Jin, while Shinso could be cruel and cunning, as was evident when he threatened Tetsuryu, he didn't have the same pragmatism Jin did, and the difference in tactics was what made up for things even though Jin was at a disadvantage. And yet, Jin refused to put Shinso out of his misery and deliver the kill blow. Whoops, almost forgot you were still breathing. Jin, Shinso pushed himself from up off the ground with one arm, crossing the other one under his chest, balling his fist. Blood dripped from the countless lacerations and stab wounds Jin had delivered to him. What has happened to you over these many years? I thought returning to the Soul Society would return you to your former self. You and I were partners to protect what you wanted to protect. You wanted to kill Aizen so much so that you focused your power on its killing potential, throwing aside your will to protect. You think I can just go back to how I was? Sorry, but dat ain't me no more, Shinso. I'm a bitter old bastard that enjoys messin' with people, and until you learn to accept what I am now, I'm not letting ya come back to me. A Zanpakuto and a master that don't trust each other have diminished power. You're not nearly as tough to beat as when I subjugated ya to get my Bankai. You may be free from me, but your lack of trust and hatred towards me weakens ya. It weakens me too. I thought ya accepted me at face value, but I guess when it comes down to it, I'm just a magnificent bastard with no real allies, Jin stated. You would rather fight alone than fight with someone who doesn't trust you? Shinso asked. Course, cause if I got dear trust makes it easier to backstab them. Shinso was not amused by Jin's statement. Alright, too morbid for ya, I get it. Jin sighed. Bottom line is that I am who I am. Everyone else might be learnin' to correct themselves from dear Zanpakuto, and aim to change themselves for the better, but you're the one that needs to change, Shinso, not me. Shinso lowered his head and looked at the ground. I see, Shinso said and looked at the ground, then finish me off. I must start to try and understand what you've become. You are my master and I your servant. Shinso closed his eyes and let his mind meld with his smiling master. I have given you a portion of my power. Use it to finish me off. Jin smiled. Don't mind if I do. He aimed his short sword at Shinso like a soldier holding a sniper rifle. Shoot to kill, Shinso. The blade pierced the fox-like spirit right between the eyes. He fell to the ground, and while the blood stains remained, faded into Jin's sword. Tison walked up to Jin from behind the gates. You're a monster as always, Ichimaru. Oh, hey Tison. Jin looked behind him and saw the cricket that was Suzumushi standing flittering behind him. I see you two kissed and made up. Is he always like this? Suzumushi asked. Your Zanpakuto got amnesia, Tison? Jin asked. Tison sighed, because I cannot see, my Zanpakuto cannot see my memories. Once I learned that, I promised to show her what I had neglected to let her see. Ah, you don't tell her about little ol' me. I'm her Tison-san, Jin chuckled. Oh, I know who you are, Ichimaru Jin. Kaname just doesn't talk often about you, she responded. Ah, gotcha, was Jin's reply. Judging from the scent of blood and your strong Ryutsu, I take it you won, Tison stated. Yup, Jin smiled. I thought you said he was more talkative than this, Suzumushi stated. It's a game of his. He screws with others for his entertainment, Tison responded. I've got a lot to learn, don't I? Suzumushi asked. Look, I'm sure Tison-san can tell ya all about his past and introduce ya to everything you've missed in the last century or so, but right now we've got a problem. I don't think a captain would fail to notice the lack of Ryutsu near Kurosaka-san, Jin stated. Tison lifted his head up and laughed with Shunpo. Ah, master, Suzumushi followed suit. Jin chuckled, so unprofessional. While Jin and Tison went to recover Ichigo and Yuna, Isane was still contending with her Zanpakuto. As Isane struggled to battle Itagumo on the sliding ice, her Zanpakuto was having no trouble at all, though her footwear was designed for better traction control on low-friction surfaces. Despite this, Ida was dashing around the frozen pond like she was ice skating, and when she got close to Isane, spin kicked her in the face and knocked her former master to the ground, causing Isane to slide along the ground. Ida then began to skate a figure 8 as she waited for her master to get back up. All the while she stared at Isane with at least one eye. Why can't you be more secure about yourself? Everything you do always causes you to get all flustered in some way or another. Whether it's failure to impress your captain or you're flushing in front of your precious Lelich-kun. That's... See, you can't even give me an answer. Why was I outfitted with such an indecisive master and an impulsive one too? When you were a phantom you always rushed in head first. If Iin Tamashi's master wasn't so calculating, you would have been the team's Achilles heel. Ida spun and continued to trace her figure 8. She finally stopped and just looked at Isane. Even now you've decided for almost no reason at all that you want to marry Lelich. What do you know about him other than the fact that you took care of him when he was injured, served him for 15 years and happened to have a big huge crush on him since you first laid eyes on him? Nothing, that's what. Ida was really laying into Isane. Even so, I still feel like I've made the right decision. Isane affirmed. Have you? Ida asked. How much thought went into that decision? None. Isane, I'm subdued because you're impulsive and highly reactive. You need to chill out like I did to that tree over there. Ida indicated the tree she had frozen solid when Isane dodged her initial attack. Here, chillax. Ida sent out another frosty gale. Isane used flash step to dodge and tried to attack Ida from behind, but Ida dodged and countered by spinning and then kicked Isane in the side of her abdomen, sending her master sliding across the ice. She then slammed her foot into Isane's back and dug it vigorously into her back. You're still too impulsive, Isane, Ida said and held her hand out as it tingled with a frosty aura. Chillax. The cold swept through Isane and she began to shiver. Her Zanpakuto was going to freeze her to death at this rate. She's right, I'm always so impulsive, always so indecisive. Whether it's Teiko or Lelich-kun, I always have problems just being myself. Isane's ability to think slowed as the frost began to completely coat her body. One thing I do know right now, if I don't act, Ida will freeze me solid, but what can I do? Isane wondered, and put her hand to the ice. She felt cold, but as she looked forward she saw the green coniferous trees across the water. Isane had a realization. That's right, it's the middle of summer, which means this ice is made artificially by my Zanpakuto, the water isn't Arctic temperature. Isane came up with a method of counter-attack. She pressed her palm firmly to the ground. Heido 31, Shakkeiho. Ida saw the red light and back off her master. Isane sank into the pond, and the water, being warmer than the ice that had coated her body moments ago, was refreshing. The pond was a lot deeper than Isane had thought, and it looked like it went down at least 20 feet. Of course Isane didn't need to go that deep, she just needed to get out. Awakened, she leapt out of the water. Heido 33, Sakasui. She took aim at her Zanpakuto. I won't fail this time. I have an idea. She thought to herself and landed on the opposite side of her pond from her Zanpakuto. Ida darted around the pond towards Isane. She touched Isane's soaked kosid and caused the water on it to crystallize. Isane, without a care in the world, promptly, and on purpose, tossed her kosid at her Zanpakuto, leaving only her Shitajai on. She was showing a lot more cleavage than usual, but things were going according to plan. One of Ida abilities was its ability to freeze any liquid water solid, and once the process it wasn't possible to stop. Not wasting any time as her kosid continued to crystallize, Isane grabbed the sleeves and choked her Zanpakuto with them. Ida struggled to break free of the strangulation, but eventually the whole kosid crystallized and Ida was left with the heavy kimono around her neck. I've got you, Isane declared. Impressive, Ida choked, barely able to breathe, her trachea almost being crushed by her own power. That was quite a plan, and look, you're not even abashed by your appearance. Isane merely turned a little red in the cheeks. It's only because no one else is around. And no one will see me like this. I'll hurry back to my division. Whatever, it's not like I can stop you anyway, Idagumo said, and Isane saw the ice continue to form along her Zanpakuto's neck. I'm going to be unable to breathe soon, and when that happens I'll be back under your control. Good, Isane said with a smile and let Idagumo go. It'll be nice to have you back. Idagumo gave Isane one of her rare smiles and then promptly passed out on the ground from asphyxiation. Despite all the chaos that had just transpired, Hisuna and Rukia were very calmly prancing about the Sakura garden in the Kukaki manner. Hisuna traipsed over to the largest Sakura tree in the garden. The petals glowed in the moonlight and created a soothing ambience to the atmosphere. It was hard for Hisuna to remember that things were so chaotic with such a peaceful scene. Also, the Sakura tree in question had been cared for by her own two hands all these years. Hisuna didn't think the tree would be quite as big if she hadn't been the one to nurture it. She bought the seeds to plant the tree after her and Byakuya's wedding day, and it had grown in the backyard ever since. She recalled many happy moments she had spent with Byakuya under the tree and in the garden itself when they were children, teenagers, in the 6th Division. Everything flooded back to her as she stroked the trunk with her hand. You and that tree, Rukia chuckled, walking over to her sister. I planted and gave this tree life, Hisuna said with the same biting attitude her sister was giving her. Yes, I know, Rukia responded and then opened her mouth and yawned, covering her mouth her hand. Tired? Hisuna asked. It's after midnight, normally I get sleep by now. With Sode no Shirayuki free from my body still, it's hard keeping all the reishi. She yawned as she talked. I need to stay awake. Killing Muramasa will probably solve that, Hisuna said. Come on, she put a firm hand on her sister's back. Since you have the body of a teenage girl you need your rest. I'll keep watch. And before Hisuna could continue talking, a cut scraped across her cheek. She and Rukia both felt Ryotsu, and Rukia snapped awake instantly as the sisters went for their swords. This Ryotsu, I know it. I know you're out there, Hisuna scowled. Show yourself, Senbonzakura. The masked samurai appeared before the Sayuri siblings. Hisuna, Rukia, he said, his shikai petals floating around him. Why are you here? Hisuna asked. Is that any way to treat someone about to reunite you with your husband? Senbonzakura asked. Where is Byakuya-sama? Hisuna asked. If you want to know, Senbonzakura said, follow me. He took off, but didn't go very far when he noticed Hisuna turn to Rukia. Go, I'll wait for you here, Rukia told her Ne-san. Hisuna nodded and took off after Senbonzakura. Sing, Kaze no Irako. Hisuna released her whip. She didn't want to risk the fact that Senbonzakura was luring her into a trap. After all, Iin Tamashi was at the helm of the enemy intelligence. Hisuna wanted to be prepared. She followed Senbonzakura across the forest that surrounded the Kukaki manor, expecting to come to a clearing and be forced to fight him. After all, if she fell, that would be it for the Soul Reapers having a commander. However, when she reached her and Senbonzakura's destination, a lake near a waterfall that on the other side was a raised trail that, if traveled downward, one would reach the 6th Division, she saw Byakuya standing by the water looking down at the rock. He was staring at the rock. He was unharmed. He looked in Hisuna's direction with his usual cold expression. Be Byakuya-sama. Hisuna gasped. Hisuna, he called out to her. Is it really you? She asked. This isn't an illusion or anything like. It is really me, Hisuna. Byakuya beckoned her forward. Hisuna dropped her whip and ran forward to give the man she loved a big hug. Byakuya led her into his arms. I'm so happy, Hisuna responded, sounding like she might cry. Hisuna, I have a favor to ask, Byakuya said. You know I would do anything for you, Hisuna responded. Then, come with me, he told her. Come with you, Hisuna let go of Byakuya. Where? Senbonzakura appeared next to Byakuya. Come with me to join the Zanpakuto. Hisuna looked crushed, unbelieving what she had just heard. What did you say? I said, I want you to. Byakuya stopped talking when Hisuna started backing up. Hisuna, what's wrong? You just said you would do anything for me, and I need you at my side. No, Hisuna said with a heavy heart. No, are you refusing me? Byakuya asked. Hisuna bent down to pick up her whip. It's not that I don't love you, or that I don't want to be with you, but, Hisuna called out to her husband with tear-stained eyes, think of our children, Byakuya. How can you betray the Soul Society like this? My actions are to preserve my self-respect. You would understand if you would come with me, Byakuya said to Hisuna. I could never understand, Hisuna said, I can't understand. And besides, if I go, who will lead the other Soul Reapers? I am the best we have with the senior captains having lost their Zanpakuto. Byakuya was silent for a moment. I see, then there is nothing further to discuss. I didn't want to do this, Hisuna, but you've left me no choice. I'm going to leave now, and if you try to stop me, I will cut you down. Bankai, Hisuna said in anguish and transformed into her Bankai, Saigo no Chu no Kaze no Irako. In unison both Senbonzakura and Byakuya released their Bankai. Hisuna did not even have time to put up a proper defense before she was cut down. Of course, Byakuya did not attack her with full force. He wounded her only enough to keep her from fighting back efficiently or chasing him, and then left behind a whirlwind of sakura petals. Hisuna, cut up in various places, sealed her blade and cried out in anguish to the sky. What's going on? The next morning. The cavern of the Zanpakuto. Under Lelich's healing Kido, Susanna lay on the ground. The captain of Squad 10 was in a corner in the dark away from the onlooking eyes of the Zanpakuto. It was not because he did not trust them or vice versa, but because he was expecting someone besides Iin Tamashi to be looking over his shoulder in a matter of moments. Eventually that person did come. Took you long enough to get here, Lelich said. I had to confuse Hisuna and anyone else that might have tried to pursue me on my way here. Our location cannot be found out, and Kendra is a very efficient Squad 2 lieutenant, the voice responded. I can understand that. Lelich looked up with a smirk at Byakuya as he and Senbonzakura stood by. Why is she here? Byakuya asked Lelich. She wanted to join us, Lelich responded. Even after I attacked her, twice, she still insisted on assisting. I wouldn't turn away free help, would you? No, I suppose not, but unlike us she has not recovered her Zanpakuto, Byakuya responded. Don't worry, I already took care of that, Lelich said with a smirk. Earlier. Iin Tamashi, what's this about? Reimei Inoto asked as he and the feisty redhead found themselves secluded from the other Zanpakuto, and Lelich. Nothing much, just a simple request, Iin Tamashi said. And that is? Reimei Inoto asked. Iin Tamashi got in close and stared at Reimei Inoto with her hand under her chin, forcing her to look at him. The geese emblem appeared in her eye. Return to your master. Reimei Inoto gasped, but eventually found himself forced to carry out Iin Tamashi's command. Present time. Clever, Byakuya responded. I thought so, Lelich answered. I take it your wife didn't take kindly to your proposal? Iin Tamashi asked. She's leading the other Soul Reapers. You were right though, Lelich. Just how did you know she wouldn't comply? Byakuya asked. Because she was a phantom, Lelich responded. She knows injustice when she sees it, or rather believes she sees it. It shames me to know that you know her better than I do. Byakuya's words almost made it seem like he was hurt, but his face, as always, was hard to read. Inside though, Byakuya did mean what he said. Trust me when I say that you don't necessarily have to all the time. Women are fickle, Lelich said, and then got slapped in the back of the head by Iin Tamashi. Rather than reacting though, he simply looked at her and went back to healing Susanna. Senbonzakura tried his best not to let out a grunt, finding humor in the action. I do trust you, Byakuya said to Lelich, that's why you're here. Lelich smirked, I suppose so. 2 nights ago. I desire to walk a path so dark you would never dare walk it again, Iin Tamashi told Lelich and fired forward a large fireball at him. Bakudo 39, in Kosen. Lelich shielded himself, but soon found Iin Tamashi right behind him. She lifted him up with her telekinesis. You can use Bankai, Lelich squirmed as Iin Tamashi gripped him tightly, without needing to switch. All of your powers are my powers, Lelich, it should come as no surprise, Iin Tamashi said and slung Lelich into a few walls before ultimately flinging him far away. She then chucked several large fireballs at Lelich. Using Shunpo, Lelich dodged each one. Iin Tamashi, I don't understand, Lelich said as he dodged fireballs. I told you that I was privileged to have you. He used Shunpo, why then would you turn on me? He dodged again. I don't care if you choose to leave, but, he used Shunpo again. Why would you, he used it again, attack me? If I wanted to get away from you Lelouch I wouldn't be doing this, but this is a rebellion. Iin Tamashi responded and a ring of fireballs appeared around her. You're too cunning for us to let you live. She fired forward all the fireballs as they zoomed out and around and then honed in on Lelouch. I see, then I'll defeat you and crush the Zanpakuto rebellion. Lelouch said and took to the sky, leaping high into the air and smiling down on Iin Tamashi as he honed in on her. Here's a little something I picked up from a friend of mine. Lelouch said, and as he neared Iin Tamashi controlled his form just before he reached her, spun in a counterclockwise motion and bashed his Zanpakuto in the side of the face with the side of his foot. Iin Tamashi went crashing into a pillar as Lelouch prepped to follow up. Bakudo 63, Seijo Sabaku. Lelouch cast the locking binding stripes and made sure to be holding onto one of the bands. Heido 11, Tsyuzuri Raiden. The lightning wave went out and shocked the binding stripes. Lelouch thought he had effectively injured Iin Tamashi, but the pillar broke down and Iin Tamashi, while injured, proved that she was now royally pissed off. Seishin Musho, she bound Lelouch in his spiritual pressure, Shikumo. Lelouch gasped when he saw the death cloud heading for him. He had to think of a counter-maneuver or he was toast. I have to fight it. Think Lelouch, you can think on your feet. He felt the licking of the black fog nearing him, obscuring Iin Tamashi from his sight. Struggling he pushed his hands into the ground and then had an epiphany. The ground, of course. Bakudo 37, Tsurubashi. Lelouch created a safety net, above him, pressing him into the ground. Bakudo 37, Tsurubashi. He then did the same thing to the ground and effectively pushed himself in between the two blue nets. It'll take a while for these nets to be eaten through. Lelouch was pressed firmly in place by the two nets as Seishin Musho bound him in place, but he had an idea. I can't use my Zanpakuto, that much is obvious. Normally this wouldn't work, but if Iin Tamashi and I are now considered separate entities this could work. Iin Tamashi. He called out. If you're like me, then wouldn't you want to see my demise up close and personal? Iin Tamashi didn't say anything in response, but Lelouch calmed his mind and heard footsteps approach. That's it, come right to me. Lelouch grinned. With his right hand he moved it as best he could and pressed it firmly into the Kido. He then removed his contacts with his right hand. Bakudo 26, Kyoko. He made everything, including the death cloud, invisible. He then turned his head and stared Iin Tamashi right in the face. Return to me? He shouted. You cunning bastard. Iin Tamashi turned wide-eyed. She became affected by Lelouch's geese and dropped to her knees in a trance. The death cloud dissipated and Lelouch cast all of his Kido. He then stood in front of Iin Tamashi as she sat on her knees in silence. Her stood in front of her and she eventually rose to her feet, but she didn't seem as hostile as she was before. I told you to return to me, Lelouch said aggravatingly. I am back with you, Iin Tamashi responded, but I don't feel like going into your musty inner world. After all, Iin Tamashi glanced up at one of the tall skyscrapers. We have company. Lelouch looked up where his Zanpakuto was looking and saw Byakuya. Byakuya Taeko. Byakuya leapt down from the building and Senbonzakura formed up next to him. I see you two have succeeded in recovering your Zanpakuto. Lelouch nodded. Lelouch, I have an idea as to what is going on. Will you hear me out? Of course. If there's something you know about all this, sharing information is the best thing for me to figure out how I'll put a stop to it, Lelouch answered. Byakuya took a deep breath and then explained to Lelouch about Koga, his uncle that he had never met, his late aunt Shirana's fiancé. I see, this will certainly be useful for all of us to know, Lelouch, this is something I need to do myself, and something I'd like your help with doing, Byakuya stated. My help? Lelouch asked, confused, intrigued, and honored to be asked by Byakuya for assistance. You have done much for my family, and me, over the course of this past century. I would not ask anyone else for assistance if I did not think I could use it. Besides, even if I hadn't come to you, you would have figured it out on your own eventually, Byakuya stated. Hold on, Lelouch said, cupping his hand to his chin, based on what you're saying, It sounds like you intend to let Muramasa release Koga and then finish Koga off yourself. But in order to do that, yes, I would have to make it seem as though I am betraying the Soul Society. I cannot ask anyone else to do this, but you. I'd ask Hisuna, but I understand, you're unsure if she'll come through. Well, I'll arrange it so that you can check up on that, see what she says. For now, Lelich looked over the horizon and saw how high in the sky the moon was. We should drop off the grid, go after Muramasa and ingratiate ourselves to him. So you'll help me? Byakuya asked. Of course, Lelich smiled with a slick grin. The very idea of playing the dark side and faking out everyone, I don't know why, but I kind of like it. Byakuya dropped to his knee in thanks. Arigato gozaimasu, sensei. I am most honored that you would join me. You don't need to praise me for it, Lelich said as Byakuya got back to his feet and unwrinkled his uniform. Remember what I told you. Lelich's smirk grew wider. Should you ever require my assistance, I'd gladly help you in any way I can. After all, Lelich gave his hand to Byakuya to shake. You remind me of an old friend of mine in that, together, with our intellect and skill, together we can vanquish almost any foe. Providing a rarity he only showed once in a blue moon, Byakuya's expression turned kind and a small, faint smile crept over his face. He shook Lelich's hand. Present day. I meant what I said back then, Lelich said as he almost finished healing Susanna. You and I are invincible together. I've always believed that ever since you became a captain. It feels good to know you and I are going to be partners in crime. Byakuya scowled. Okay, maybe crime wasn't exactly the best word. A low-volume moan alerted Lelich to Susanna's condition as she stirred and woke up. Lelich Dono. Are you okay? Lelich asked with a kind smile. Susanna sat up quickly and hugged Lelich tightly, smiling. I'd take that as a yes, Iin Tamashi answered. Susanna though soon felt like a blood donation volunteer that had gotten up too quickly and slumped backwards. Lelich let her down gently. Easy there, he told her, I just finished healing you. Susanna then noticed Byakuya. What is Kukaki Teiko doing here? She asked. We've been working together, Lelich stated. You lie there and I'll explain everything to you that you need to know. Okay, Lelich Dono, Susanna said with a soft smile. And thank you. 4th Division. Arg. Hisuna punched a tree. Teiko, please calm down, getting angry isn't going to solve anything, Izuru told her. The Soul Reapers were once again at assembly. This time the assembly consisted of Yasuie, Izuru, Hisuna, Isane, Momo, Hitsugaya, Renji, Yuna, Shunsui, Ashido, Tison, Jin, Rangiku, Kyokaku, Kaien, Rukia, Vera, Ichigo, and Tatsuki. As well as the Zanpakuto of those who managed to recover them. Hisuna's anger was understandable, of course. After all, she had just heard from Yuna and Ichigo that not only was Lelich on the side of the Zanpakuto, but also Ashido and Shunsui did manage to find record of a Zanpakuto called Muramasa. Unfortunately, it also seemed that whatever record there had been of the Zanpakuto other than that it existed 300 years ago and then disappeared along with its owner, with no details given, were missing, but the likelier scenario was that they were taken. The Department of Research and Development reported to have had a break-in the night before and the digitized records on Muramasa had been deleted and the written records, which Shunsui said were in the 6th Division, were completely gone, having been removed from the shelves. The digital records can be recovered with time, Shunsui stated, but it'll certainly take a while. It had to be Lelich. He must have used his geese to bypass the security and everything, Kyokaku reasoned. And Teiko must have knocked out Ryu and me in order to get into his division, Renji responded. This whole thing makes me want to scream at the top of my lungs in frustration, Hisuna grumbled. Getting angry isn't going to solve anything, Kyokaku said, besides that's my shtick. My sister's right, what we should be doing is trying to make sense of all this, not getting angry that it happened, Kaien said. Hisuna took a deep breath. I suppose you're right. Jin, ideas. Well, all I can think of is that Kukaki and Lelich gotta be working together. There's no way both of them just happened to decide to defect. The real question is who convinced who to join, Jin pondered. What difference does it make? Rangiku asked. It makes all the difference, don't ya see? Jin asked. If Lelich was the one asked to corroborate den it's Kukaki we got to figure out. If it's the other way around den we're really screwed. Then let's work on Lelich being the one asked to defect, Hisuna said firmly. Byakuya-sama said something about protecting his self-respect. I get the feeling that means he's the one that coerced Lelich. Smart move at that too, Shunsui stated. If Lelich were here we might have already figured out this conundrum. What does it matter why they're doing it, Ichigo said. I say we just storm wherever it is they're hiding and force the answer out of them if we have to. It also would help if we knew where the head captain was, Hitsugaya put in. You don't think he's agreed to their plan too, do you? I don't see that as being likely, Yuna said. If the head captain had really turned against us with the Zanpakuto, Lelich would have said something to make us feel boxed into a corner. He's not the type to spur false hope in his enemy. Unless he wants us to think that and has Yamaji under his geese, Shunsui stated. That's not likely either, Yasui stated. Lelich and Byakuya were both on Sokioku Hill when all of this started. Whatever's going on it happened after our Zanpakuto were freed, which means it's all the more likely they might have defected to figure out what happened to head captain Yamamoto. Which might be the case, Kendra's voice rang out before she warped into the garden. Otamaka Fukutaiko, Hisuna recognized her. I'm praying you have some good news. Kendra nodded. Oh, I've got some of the most interesting news yet. Yolanda and I have, at this point, searched all over the Siridi for our Zanpakuto, but we've turned up empty. How is that good news? Hisuna asked. Momo picked up on it. Wait, you looked over every inch of the Siridi? Momo asked. Every nook and cranny across it, which means. Yasui picked up on it as well. They're underground. Bingo, Kendra answered. We're underground though, we still have 4th Division members looking under the sewers, Hisuna stated. There's one place I can think of and it's not an easy spot to even know about, Kendra said. Ever wondered what's beneath Sokioku Hill? They're in Sokioku Cavern. Ashido asked. That would be my guess. It's spacious enough to keep them all and I would suspect that with Lelich on their side they've probably cleverly concealed the entrance, Kendra stated. That being said, all we need to do now is storm the cavern, so to speak. Then let's Ichigo started to say until a heavy riotsu began crushing the group. This riotsu, it's enormous, so dense, Rukia gagged. Ichigo, look. Tatsuki pointed. Ichigo looked up and saw Zanjitsu floating above him. Old man. Of course Zanjitsu wasn't the only one that had arrived. Along with him Yogo Kaikai and Fumetsu Seishin no Senso had also appeared as well as Akuma Ansatsu, Yokanene Kaze, Aki Satsugai, Tetsuryu, Yajokokyo, and Chikami Sorai. But the heavy riotsu was not coming from any of them. The heavy riotsu was coming from a Zanpakuto floating on the rooftop above the 4th Division. Shunsui turned wide-eyed with fear as he saw it. Jin's eyes opened and Isane trembled with fear. Standing amongst the group of Zanpakuto was a figure with its face framed in shadow, wearing a slim green hood that covered its whole body and its torso covered in bandages. Whose Zanpakuto is that? Tatsuki asked. That's Teiko's Zanpakuto, Isane trembled. Minajiki. Now everyone was frightened. Minajiki floated down from its perch and stood in front of the group, then it slowly opened its glowing, slanted, red eyes. To be continued. Chapter 100, Kukaki Byakuya, Sacrifices We Make. Third-person POV. Before the field of battle can be entered, a quick look at how Byakuya and Lelich secured their loyalty to Muramasa must be told. After finishing Susanna's recovery, Lelich, Byakuya, Iin Tamashi, Senbonzakura, and Reimei Inodo all piled into the main cavern hub in order to commune with the other Zanpakuto. I don't like this, Tataka no Senshi growled. We worked to get away from the Soul Reapers and now there are 3 of them working with us. It is a rather odd choice of alignment, Zanjitsu agreed. I am inclined to agree with the others, Muramasa stated. Kukaki Byakuya, Lamperouge Lelich, Shapani Susanna. How can we all ensure that you are on our side? Susanna's loyalty you do not have to worry about, Muramasa. Lelich extended out his arm superfluously. So long as you have my alignment, you have hers. And just how do you intend to prove your loyalty? Chikami Sorai asked. Simple, Lelich smirked. Which one of you is Tekubikiri Tamashi? That would be me, a busty, pink-haired, wrist blade wearing, mahogany shirt spirit with green pants stepped forward. My loyalty, to prove my defection, he pointed at her, is to break you. Of all the crazy, Yogo Kaikai was about to get on Lelich's case, but he interrupted her. If I break you, Nemia will never forgive me. She and I are close. Yuna's faith in me has already waned, Ida Gumo has been reclaimed and Susanna is on our side, so by default that leaves you, Lelich smirked. Muramasa-sama, Takubikiri Damashi protested. It is a good idea. After all, the Zanpakuto will only return if they're masters if they are defeated by their master. A Zanpakuto defeated by any other is broken, impossible to repair unless I am defeated, Muramasa said with a smile, clasping his hand over his forehead. But sir, I've served you loyally, you would toss me aside so willingly. Takubikiri Damashi was understandably upset. The other Zanpakuto were angry as well. Do not mistake our lord. We already know that not all the Zanpakuto will survive the battle with the Soul Reapers, Zanjitsu defended. If we can so easily be reclaimed by our masters or defeated by a Soul Reaper, it is a sign of our weak will to be free. Exactly, Muramasa stated as a tear of blood formed in his eye. He wiped it away. The weak will die. He looked directly at Lelich. Kill her. As you wish. Lelich said and activated his Shikai without calling it out. He grabbed Takubikiri Damashi and warped away with her, using his Zanpakuto's special ability. He disappeared from sight, but his Ryotsu could be felt above the cavern's main hub in the tunnels above the other Zanpakuto. Tremors shook the void in the cavern as the Zanpakuto looked up at the ceiling. Damn it, he better not wreck the whole place apart, Yogo Kaikai said, aggravated. A good 7 minutes passed above ground before Lelich returned to the room with the other Zanpakuto. He threw Takubikiri Damashi's broken form at Muramasa's feet. You did that with very little hesitation. That's unexpected, Iin Tamashi told Lelich. We must all be willing to make sacrifices for the greater good. This is the price I pay for the future I will help you all shape, Lelich stated. Muramasa was not as impressed, but not because of Lelich. Yes, well, what about you, Kukaki Byakuya? How will you prove that you are loyal to us? What sacrifice will you make? Byakuya looked around. Renji, Hisuna, and Rukia all had recovered their Zanpakuto. Ichigo's was needed for the plan, so that was out of the question. In fact, besides Yogo Kaikai and Zanjitsu, there weren't many other Zanpakuto left in the group, and none of them were those that belonged to Soul Reapers close to Byakuya. What sacrifice could he make? Byakuya, Lelich dropped the honorific. As of right now, neither of them were captains, nor was Byakuya a noble, so it's acceptable to refer to him as such. There is only one sacrifice you can really make. No, better to say there are two sacrifices and both should be made. Chills ran through Byakuya's spine. Was Lelich honestly asking him, for the sake of the plan, to murder his own children? Lelich, if you're getting cold feet, you can walk out, Lelich pointed over the man's shoulder, but you'll have to get through us to do so. Byakuya didn't show it on the outside, but he was very conflicted. Could he really kill his own children to secure his loyalty with Muramasa? Why would Lelich even suggest such a thing? Byakuya studied the acting captain's demeanor. Lelich's emotions were as unreadable as ever, but Byakuya felt that he had to trust him. He remembered how much Lelich adored his godchildren. Lelich would never actually tell Byakuya to do such a thing, would he? Just what are you up to? Zanjitsu asked Lelich. What is your objective? Lelich cracked a devilish smile. It was a smile so downright satanic that Aizen would be hard-pressed to match it. Ultimate despair, Lelich answered. And so, while Lelich orchestrated a battle between the Soul Reapers and several Zanpakuto, he and Byakuya snuck off for the Kukaki Manor, knocking out several guards. Both eventually made their way to Kyo and Isao's bedroom. The twins lay in separate cribs side by side, wrapped up in blankets. Both were sleeping soundly. Byakuya only now was showing his deep confliction. He and Lelich made their way over around behind the cradles of the twins. These are the sacrifices we make, Lelich told Byakuya. I know, the father responded. In her cradle, little Kyo opened her eyes. She had woken up to the sound of two men talking to each other. Of course, as an infantile baby she had no idea what they were saying. Then she saw Byakuya's shadow, Not that she knew who he was, but the shadow, from her tiny little baby memory, resembled a man that she knew was someone that was good, so for that much she wouldn't cry. The shadow was holding something. Byakuya was standing behind Isao's crib with his sword held out, and then the blade came down. Blood splattered along the wall to the right of the entrance to the bedroom, and there was a loud scream. Oblivious to the goings-on in her home, Hisuna directed the flow of battle, and after a little bit of chaotic disorientation the battlefield had set itself up with its combatants spreading across the Siriti, away from the 4th Division and the injured unseated officers. Kendra, Yasuie, Ichigo, Vera, and Yuna all formed up against their own Zanpakuto. Izura held off Aki Satsugai, Hitsugaya held off Yokan Kaze, and Jin held off Yajokokyo. Fumetsu Seishin no Senso was taken on by the combined might of Ashido, Shunsui, Tatsuki, and Tissen. Renji was asked to fetch Kenpeki as quickly as possible. Hisuna, Rukia, and Kaien all formed up against Minajiki, hoping they could keep the Zanpakuto at bay, while Isane went inside the facility to try and find her captain and bring her to the battlefield. The whole situation was quite chaotic, and Kendra would be the first to fan the flames of war. She ran across rooftops, keeping in line with her Zanpakuto matching his speed. Daringly Kendra leapt to his rooftop and attacked. She leapt to where he was going to be caught him off guard, crouched down in front of him to block his path, and swung wide using her non-dominant left hand. Akuma Ansatsu did not get caught in the attack and leapt over Kendra and tossed a kunao at her head, turning his body and face her location. Kendra vanished with the use of Shunpo and appeared behind the faceless assassin and delivered a hard kick to his back. Akuma Ansatsu went crashing in between the pathway between the two rooftops, and Kendra landed firmly behind him, poised on her feet. "You might be my Zanpakuto, but you don't have my speed," she insulted. Her sword got up off the ground and stared at Kendra. "Even without you, I'm one of the fastest Soul Reapers in the Godai. You are just an enhancement." Her Zanpakuto spoke as a wispy voice, "Indeed you are fast. It doesn't change anything. Do you even know why I left?" Kendra folded her arms. "Oh, this should be good. Spill it." "I simply pose a question. What was it you wanted to do to honor your sister when you graduated the academy?" Akuma Ansatsu asked. Kendra's face was blank. She knew what her Zanpakuto was getting at. Kendra's motivation always been the head of the STRU, yet here she was the head of Patrol Corps. Her motive was off, but why? True, she surpassed Yolanda and Yasuie in skill, but Naomi was farther down than them because of the responsibilities that came with being 3rd and 4th seats. When Stefan became captain, Kendra had hoped that he would find a suitable lieutenant and 3rd seat and bump her down to 4th, but he did not. And yet, in all the years she had served as the 2nd Division lieutenant, she never complained once. Even before Yolanda had been put in charge, she had not complained. Was she complacent with her assigned seat? Did she no longer care about her sister? Neither of those things was true. Kendra simply suspected that her Zanpakuto knew of a greater motive that even Kendra herself was unaware of on the conscious level. "I read your mind like an open book. What you're thinking is true. Deep inside, like the responsibility you've been assigned and the respect you are given. As head of patrol troops, you like the thrill of the hunt. I've never seen you happier than when you've been asked to apprehend a criminal. You derive a certain pleasure in restraining the accused and fighting those that resist capture. Am I wrong?" Kendra shook her head. "But then, why fight for Muramasa? Why betray me?" "Because I get that same thrill." Akuma Ansatsu brandished his Shikai dagger, "and I've always wanted to hunt you." Akuma Ansatsu disappeared into the shadows and came out through the wall and attacked Kendra, but the 2nd seat was prepared to fend him off. She was a trained assassin. She had been with 2nd Division her entire time as a Soul Reaper. Under her captain and his predecessor, Shihoin Yoriyuki, she had learned much in the silent art. Akuma Ansatsu dove through the wall nearby her and slunk into it. Kendra could see his shadowy outcropping along the wall itself and waited, followed him. He slunk down beneath the floor and tried to strike Kendra from below. She dodged in the air, but the drag caused by her Hakama slowed her down and her Zanpakuto dug his blade into her shoulder. Kendra dropped to the ground like lead, but on purpose, and then sped away from the area. Her Zanpakuto pursued. He had no visual, but he could sense Kendra's Ryutsu directly in front of him. Running away, Kendra? That's not like you, he taunted. However, as he chased he saw a sandal go flying in his direction. It was followed by another sandal and then by 2 scraps off cloth. Undressing in the middle of a battle? Is this some kind of joke? He wasn't laughing though when Kendra's corset went flying into his face and he veered out of the way as it landed on the ground. He continued his pursuit of Kendra until he suddenly lost sense of her. Kendra completely vanished from his senses. No wait, she was right behind. Stab. She got him right in the jugular and along the side of his neck. She also got him in the heart. In Kendra's right hand was her sword, in her left were 2 of her hairpins, the pointy ends stabbed into Akuma Ansatsu. Kendra's hairpins were each as sharp as daggers. She was always very careful when she put them in every morning. The corner rat bites the cat, as the saying goes. Heh, well done, Akuma Ansatsu congratulated and vanished into a wisp of shadow before returning to his master. Kendra decided it was best for her to go and get her squad mates so that they could take control of their swords. At this same time Yasuie was combating with Tetsuryu. As both had a sense of honor between them, and since Tetsuryu was unarmed, the match was a fist fight. The Iron Dragon's reason for leaving his master was simple. Tetsuryu was uncomfortable with his master leading the detention unit. He did not see the honor in having such a position. Yasuie decided that their argument could be decided upon with the same mentality that the 11th Division used, the winner was the one who was right. Tetsuryu had set up a nice little area in the streets that he surrounded with his green flames. Being knocked through the flames was grounds for defeat and the loser would have to submit to the victor. Yasuie zipped forward towards the large dragon and let loose a flurry of punches with his right hand, keeping his guard up with his left. He quickly realized that Tetsuryu was taking the hits unfazed. Oh hell! Whap! Yasuie got whacked with Tetsuryu's tail and went flying, but he gained aerial control so as not to go through the wall of fire behind him. Tetsuryu came at him with a leap and a right hook, and as Yasuie dodged he realized that he had the advantage in speed. He knew Tetsuryu better than to use his Zanpakuto's powers, it just wasn't in him to break their code of honor like that, but even without that Yasuie still knew that there was a difference in stance between the two of them. Yasuie was agile, while Tetsuryu was slow, but strong. No pressure Yasuie, it's just physics, the third seat thought to himself, you just gotta figure out how to pick up a 300-kilogram dragon that sits wherever it wants. He did a few backflips to go near the edge of the makeshift arena and then circled around his opponent's flank. He slid towards Tetsuryu and performed a low kick, sweeping the dragon off its feet. Yasuie popped to his feet, uppercut the dragon in the jaw, followed it into the air, gave it the old 2 double fist and then kicked it as hard as he could in his stomach and sent it out of the arena. Victory is mine. Meanwhile, Izuru had lured Aki Satsugai into chasing him through 3rd Division's forest. The nimble, pony-tailed spirit soared over Izuru's head from behind and constantly fired upon the hapless vice-captain, and he used Shunpo to dodge, making the whole thing seem like something out of a shooter game. Aki Satsugai became frustrated that she couldn't land any shots on Izuru as he ran from her, but suddenly he stopped short and turned to face her, and she overshot her position, allowing Izuru to take advantage of the oversight. Hado 58, 10 ran. He blew Aki Satsugai as far away as he could and he lost visual. He waited for her to come back, hand on his sword. Unfortunately, putting distance between him and Yolanda's Zanpakuto was probably the worst thing he could have done. A loud bang ruptured through the forest and Izuru got tagged in the arm with a sniper bullet. Bakudo 39, Inko. Another bullet ripped through the right side of his abdomen, grazing it. Unlike her owner, Aki Satsugai was very efficient with her Shikai's sniper mode. She could reload very quickly and she could move while shooting, much unlike her owner. Izuru thought he was going to lose his life as every time he tried to call Aikido or move, a bullet would either tag him or barely miss. He couldn't get in on the Zanpakuto. He thought he was screwed. And then Lady Luck showed up in the form of 4th seat of Squad 2, Bermuda Yolanda. She was not dressed in her normal attire though. She was wearing a red long coat and a brown, bulletproof, hard leather vest rather than the traditional Kosid and Shitajai. The next bullet that was fired penetrated the cloak, but seemed to have a hard time getting through it as it was made of a super dense, but lightweight material developed by the 12th Division. And not a moment too soon, Yolanda said. What's with the get-up? Izuru asked her. This is a new anti-projectile suit the 12th Division is working on. It's meant to be used to be resistant to physical projectiles spat from hollows and the Ceros of Aminos Grande. I volunteered to take it for a test spin since my Zanpakuto is a gunslinger. Of course that's not everything I'm testing. Yolanda flipped her coat and revealed that and whipped out 2 pistols from the inside of the jacket. Both were white and shaped like regular police issue .44 Magnum revolvers. Yolanda flipped them out into the air, grabbed them and crossed them over her body. When Soul Reapers first came together, originally we used special pistols that fired spirit energy to destroy hollows. However, not only were these weapons draining on our bodies, but Zanpakuto proved to be more efficient as hollows became stronger due to the fact that they were a part of us and could increase our strength by performing a synergistic bond. We had to learn to adapt, and thus the art of the Zanjutsu was born. However, Yolanda dropped her arms down at her sides. Most of you are used to fighting with your swords, blades, whatever. However, I enjoy my guns, and so I dug back in the vault and had the research department whip me up a pair of these babies with some special enhancements. Like so, she fired one shot and a photon of energy went rocketing towards Aki Satsugai, forcing her to return to her dual-wielding state. Go and get yourself patched up, Izuru, Yolanda stated. I'll take it from here. She took off after her Zanpakuto. She obtained visual, and her Zanpakuto used her sawed-off shotgun on Yolanda. The 4th seat leapt onto a tree branch and fired off 4 photons at her Zanpakuto. The shots were scarily accurate. Aki Satsugai angrily fired off more shotgun blasts, but Yolanda used Shunpo and escaped to the next tree over, but Aki Satsugai didn't let up and kept firing, chasing her former master and switching to the assault rifle, growing impatient as he master continued to dodge her. Yolanda circled around Aki Satagai's spray of bullets until she got right in a straight line with her Zanpakuto. She tucked her arms under her cloak to protect, tucked her head in low and used Shunpo to dodge the entourage of bullets. Aki Satsugai started backing up as Yolanda drew closer and closer. Damn it! Why can't I hit her? The tangerine-haired spirit gritted her teeth. With one last burst of Shunpo, Yolanda got right in her Zanpakuto's space and aimed both her pistols at her spirit's chest, only to find herself looking down the barrel of Aki Satsugai's shotgun. At this range neither of us will miss. Hey, you fire, I fire, and a fair warning, you're aiming at my breast guard, Aki Satsugai responded. Doesn't seem like there's much to guard, Yolanda said, pressing her weapons flush against her Zanpakuto's uniform. Aki Satsugai pressed her assault rifle in at an angle into Yolanda's skull. Say that again and I'll put more holes in your brain than graham cracker. Yolanda smirked. You haven't changed a bit, have you? Still looks like we're stuck like this, don't you think? Who will live? Who will die? It's quite thrilling. Go ahead, pull the trigger, Aki Satsugai taunted, we'll see how long you last. It was the most epic staring contest of the year as Yolanda and Aki Satsugai each waited for the other to do something, holding their guns at lethal spots at lethal range. It was a simple matter of who pulled the trigger faster. The sweat, the heartbeats, the fear, the anxiety, and all over one shot. The fight looked like it would never end. It looked like the battle would be an eternal stalemate with neither side willing to back down. And it would be. Yolanda and Aki Satsugai would stand there forever and ever wondering who would pull the trigger, not. With a sly smirk, Yolanda dropped her guns. Aki Satsugai fired, but Yolanda was gone, and in the next moment Aki Satsugai felt her ponytail being cut off and a large sharp pang racked her body as blood poured from a laceration along her stomach. What? Aki Satsugai dropped to her knees in shock and found a blade by her throat and a hand on her shoulder. Well, that was a risk, but it looks like it paid off, Yolanda said from behind Aki Satsugai with her sword poised at the berated spirit's throat. Aki Satsugai turned her neck and looked at Yolanda with a shocked look. Surprised? You shouldn't be. I'm a long-running veteran. I was in war even before I died. The sound of a shotgun entered into Yolanda's thoughts. When you are the casualty of the greater good, when you are trained to kill to fight for your homeland, when you are forced to grow up quicker because of constant wars, forced to pick up a weapon and defend yourself before you've barely begun to learn your multiplication tables, you know all of what I was, but you retain all of what I've thrown away, the innocence I still possess. I see the look on your face and I realize that now. I am far too experienced to be outmaneuvered by an enemy, but you have always looked so much younger than me and only now, with the success of this risk, do I understand why. Let us go back to how we were, Aki Satsugai. Let us be partners once more. With that, Yolanda slashed her Zanpakuto's throat and then picked up one of her special pistols and coldly blasted a shot into her sword's cranium. I am no saint, but my sin is out of necessity, Yolanda said, and as Aki Satsugai returned to her, holstered her guns and sheathed her Zanpakuto. She began to walk away. I am a soldier. During this fight, Hitsugaya was contending with Naomi's Zanpakuto spirit, Yokanene Kaze. The young boy was soon realizing that, without Hirin Maru, he was in for a little more than he bargained for. He had been cut several times by the blonde ninja spirit's quick blows. Hitsugaya had barely managed to put a scratch on him. I know I have to be better than this. Lelich would not have made me a phantom if I was never capable. Or, perhaps it was simply Hirin Maru's riot so that made me strong. How weak are we soul reapers without our spiritual companions? I always thought that perhaps we grew stronger with our Zanpakuto, but, materialized, could it be that being apart weakens us both? The reports on Ichigo had led Hitsugaya to this theory. Still, whatever the case may be, that doesn't mean I can just lie down and give up. With a fierce charge and a loud battle cry, Hitsugaya charged. Foolish young-looking captain, Yokanene Kaze scoffed, you are no match for me. However, before both combatants reached each other, they were stopped by a newcomer. With the base of her sandal she stopped Hitsugaya's blade, and with her own blade stopped her Zanpakuto's tonfa. Both of you stop, the Soul Reaper said, this fight is mine. Yokanene Kaze recognized his master, so you've come, my master. Naomi was in her serious mode. Onisama told me you had shown up. I came to get you back. You will have to beat me first. Yokanene Kaze declared. Like two ninjas, he and his master vanished completely and took to the air. His tonfa clashed with her blade as the two rose higher and higher into the air, blocking and striking each other's strikes. Even without me you remain skilled. Onisama has taught me many things, Naomi told him. I'm a far cry from what I was when we first met. Yes, that much is true, Yokanene Kaze said stoically. Now more than 400 meters in the air, Naomi split her form so that she was replicated twice over. Your shadow double trick? Too simple, Yokanene Kaze prepared to strike. Tepu. The gust attack blasted all three Naomis at once, but they were all fakes. Yokanene dodged as the real Naomi came at him from behind. She missed, but not completely. She managed to graze him in the shoulder. How very deceptive of her. She knows I know her moves, so she switches up the styles. Clever, but not clever enough. Hey! Gale, with a diagonal cut of his tonfa, a blast of air swept through Naomi's location. She dodged and flanked her Zanpakuto. Her blade clashed against his tonfa. You're perceptive, that's just what I expect from my Zanpakuto, Naomi stated. Tell me, why did you leave exactly? I was simply tired of putting up with you. Although you choose to hide your true nature behind the mask of a fool, it annoys not just me, but those around you, Yokanene Kaze told her. What do you mean hiding behind a mask? Naomi asked. She spun her body and struck backhanded, but was blocked again. This is how I always act. I just know when I've got to get serious is all. Speaking of which, shouldn't you do the same? She asked, looking at the glowing tonfa. You're not going to defeat me with the uncondensed version, you know. Will you fight me with everything you have if I do? Yokanene Kaze asked. I take my fights seriously if they're worthwhile, you know that, Naomi told him. Very well, Yokanene Kaze leapt back away from Naomi and slimmed his tonfa to the laser-like formation it was when Naomi fought Maria. Let's go, round 2. As the battle raged on, Jin had no desire to go too far. He just wanted ample space to fight, so he was still on 4th Division's grounds. Yajokokyo furiously struck at him trying to land a hit, but Jin knew better than to do that. He wasn't interested in killing Yajokokyo, especially since he knew that a single slip-up and he'd be in for a world of hurt. Jin liked life more than he liked screwing with others, and Yajokokyo was the type of enemy that if you screwed up you were going to pay for it dearly. So here he was dodging the furious assault of the beast, and then Stefan finally showed up. "Ah, there you are," was getting worried. Jin chuckled, "I've had enough playing beast tamer Luska-san, he's all yours." "Bye bye," Jin said and left the area. Stefan stared his Zanpakuto down, paying Jin no mind. "So old friend, once again we are at odds." Stefan was, of course, referring to the time he battled Yajakokyo to get his Bankai. "You would choose to take me on, despite knowing what you are up against. When you tried to subjugate me, I used my power to stop you, to force you to use your skill, to develop your abilities, but I will not be so benevolent this time. I intend to use my power to crush you," Yajakokyo stated. "I have bestial strength that you cannot even compare to. You can certainly try to do so. Even without you I am still the greatest sword master in all of the Soul Society," Stefan stated and swiped a hand underneath his bangs. "Do you remember how I obtained my nickname, Stefan the Lion? Of course, we held out against an armada of hollows when all other allies were either dead, dying or had otherwise given up," Yajakokyo responded. "Your bravery, will to protect, determination and skill are what led us to victory that day. You say us, but I did not yet know your name. Remember, you gave it to me shortly after I got it. You said I had proven myself worthy of your power. And so," Stefan took a practice swing, "I'm going to show you the reason I bear my title and bear it with pride. Even your ability, an ability I know all too well, will not defend you from my skill. I know why Muramasa took you over. You are a beast both inside and out. I am the beauty between the two of us. I will show you my skill and open your eyes to why you once revered me and why we are partners." "Bring it," Yajakokyo growled. "As you wish," Stefan declared and charged. While Stefan, with a strong mind, fierce determination, and doubtless heart took his Zanpakuto head on, Yuna was doing quite the opposite. Yogo Kaikai was overpowering her with Shikai alone. With every swing of the blade, whether it uprooted the earth, blasted a fierce gust of air or smashed into Yuna's sealed blade, the captain of Squad 7 had a hard time fighting back. With a fierce cry, Yuna put both hands on her blade and attacked Yogo Kaikai, but the blonde spirit held the weapon upside down and effectively blocked Yuna's strike before delivering a hard kick to Yuna's chest and pushing her away. "Yuna, this is pathetic," Yogo Kaikai said, standing tall while the 7th Division captain struggled to her feet. "I expect more from you, but your heart is full of doubt and it's eating away at you. Mari never betrayed you, and so now you find yourself in a difficult situation because the man you love has betrayed you. Are you questioning the value of your life, Yuna?" Yogo Kaikai held her blade at her side with both hands. "Allow me to remind you what your life currently means to me." She blasted a tearing cluster of air forward. "Nothing." Yuna dodged to the side, but Yogo Kaikai watched her and slammed her two-handed blade into the ground. A wave of dirt rose up and sped towards Yuna like a bus breaking the speed limit. Yuna rolled forward, but her Zanpakuto appeared in front of her and tried to smash her over the head. Yuna put up her blade to block and was pushed into the ground. "Right now you're submitting, you're questioning your value, and you're questioning if perhaps you should betray and join Lelich. The whole situation bothers you, and that's why I am disappointed in you, Yuna. When did the great Homura Yuna ever submit to anyone? When did you ever roll over and play dead simply because your world had been shattered? You never did. You took revenge for Mari, and even though you failed, Lelich gave you a second chance. Will you bow to him simply because he is now your enemy? Answer me, Yuna." Yuna mumbled inaudibly. "Speak up. You're a warrior, you should act like one." "I said," Yuna spoke fiercely as she pushed up on Yogo Kaikai, "I will never submit." She pushed up off her knee. "Loyalty is not the same as understanding. I never gave Lelich a free pass simply because I liked him. That fact has not changed. I will confront him." Yuna began to push back. "I will force him to tell me what his intentions are. If he refuses to tell me, I will make me understand him. I won't back down. I will protect the Soul Society." Yuna pushed up and got to her feet. "I am a captain." Yuna's riot so flared and she pushed Yogo Kaikai away. "Motivate." Yogo Kaikai. Yuna's Shikai once again appeared in her hands. "But first, I have to beat you down." Yuna scowled. "That's the spirit, my master, but can you still defeat me if I do this?" "Bankai." Yuna gasped at hearing the single-word declaration. A bright light blinded her as Yogo Kaikai began to transform. When it died down, all of the armor she had been wearing was now golden and a crimson cape accompanied Yogo Kaikai as well, but beyond that she was not as old as she had appeared in her Shikai form. She now took the form of a young woman of about Yuna's age. Her hair and eye color hadn't changed, but the style had. Yogo Kaikai's hair was now jagged at the ends rather than being smooth, straight, and wavy. It still only came down to her shoulders. Yogo Kaikai also now had a bright glowing X-shaped battle scar running across her face. It crossed from over her eyebrows down to her cheeks. The elongated, curved sparkling katana appeared in Yogo Kaikai's hands. "Are you ready for me, Yuna?" Yogo Kaikai asked. "Because here I come." While Yuna contended with her Zanpakuto so that she could get it back and confront Lelouch, Ichigo was also in the midst of doing the same. Of course, unlike Yuna, he was not alone. Ichigo and Tensou Zanjitsu were fighting the Bankai spirit's older counterpart, and the older spirit was currently using the same katana as his younger counterpart. Both Ichigo and his companion were struggling. "In order to remain manifested, I must draw on my master's strength, but I wonder, am I doing the right thing?" Tensou Zanjitsu wondered. He and his counterpart's blades clashed and he was flung off. Ichigo clashed with Zanjitsu and was blown back when their Getsuga Tenshos clashed. "I'm doing this to protect Ichigo. If I were to return to him, would he be able to maintain his form? Can I join with him? Will he be alright?" Tensou Zanjitsu's worries continued for a short while, and eventually even Ichigo realized things were kind of hopeless, but that wasn't going to stop him. Zanjitsu wanted to know, between the two of them, which one of them was stronger, and Ichigo aimed to prove that it was him, prove that he was worthy of Zanjitsu's power. But he was slowly realizing that he could not do it, not as he was. "I wonder, is our separation weakening us?" Ichigo thought as he looked to his companion. "I know Tensou Zanjitsu may not mean it, but I know I can do a lot better than this. If I could Hollow Fi, even for just a little while, I might be able to stand on par with old man Zanjitsu, but I don't know what would happen." Ichigo looked at the younger spirit. "If he wasn't in me to prevent me from going out of control." "Ichigo, is something wrong?" Tensou Zanjitsu asked. "Not wrong per se, but I was wondering if you could return to me," Ichigo stated. Tensou Zanjitsu was shocked by the brazen request. "If I could Hollow Fi, just for a little while, I think I can take him, but I need you to counteract my Hollow's energies, don't I?" Ichigo asked. "So that's your solution then? You will match my power with your own combined might?" Zanjitsu asked. "I can't be afraid to take risks. Insanity is the act of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, let's try something different and expect different results, shall we?" Ichigo asked with a smirk. "Do it and let our final clash be imminent," Zanjitsu stated. Tensou Zanjitsu was hesitant, anguished. He wondered if he could really protect his master, but Ichigo gave him a reassuring smirk. "Don't worry," he said, "I'm not going to lose control. I trust you." "Ichigo," Tensou Zanjitsu smiled at him. He focused his mind then. "All right then. I will give the portion of your power that is mine, back to you. We will merge." Tensou Zanjitsu began to dissolve and the process began. It would be a long process since Tensou Zanjitsu was going to give Ichigo all of his energy so that Ichigo could fight, but while Ichigo's fight was at a standstill, another fight was anything but. The fighters that had been fighting Fumetsu Seishin no Senso had all but been defeated. All except one, Tatsuki. Ashido had been the first to fall. A single hard punch to his face had been all it had taken to knock him out, and Tison went down the moment Fumetsu Seishin no Senso overloaded Suzumushi and Makoragi with the surge of power granted to him by level 1. After that, Shunsui didn't last much longer, and now Tatsuki was just barely hanging in there. Kaso Kabushi. Tatsuki brought her fist forward and it was gripped in Fumetsu's palm. The fire stopped, but not Tatsuki herself. Kane Ryu. She barreled forward into Kenpaku's Zanpakuto, but he just let her push him back and then grabbed her leg and threw her. Tatsuki fanned out her wings and gained aerial control. She then tossed gigantic fireball after gigantic fireball after gigantic fireball at the hat-wearing spirit. He karate chopped them all away, but Tatsuki was already behind him with her Ho-Ho ability and attacked from behind. Kyoba. She whacked her blazing leg into Fumetsu's side and sent him flying. He lowered himself to the ground and dug his fingers into the ground, tearing up the dirt as he slid. However, his fingers didn't get covered in dirt, the dirt got covered in Fumetsu Seishin no Senso. Tatsuki heated up the area around her and prepared to strike by converting her Ryutsu into Reishi. Netsuha. The scorching heat moved towards Fumetsu Seishin no Senso, but as with the dirt Fumetsu didn't get hot, the heat got Fumetsu Seishin no Senso. What is this guy, some sort of almighty super legend? Tatsuki thought to herself. No matter, Ryuseaitu. Tatsuki sent out 3 shots of flame, all of them were karate chopped to oblivion, but Tatsuki anticipated such a thing and tore forward to use another technique. Hinoken. She produced a flaming sword and proceeded to run Fumetsu Seishin no Senso through with it, but he drew out his own blade in response. Nice blade, little miss, how do you like mine? Fumetsu asked her before roundhouse kicking her in the face. Tatsuki went spiraling along the ground like the time Chad got hit with Shunsui's Hado 1 show. When she finally got up, she held her hand to her chest. Ugh, I think I cracked a rib. Tatsuki grunted and winced in pain. Damn, that was one powerful kick. I feel like I should be dead after that for some reason. You've got quite the fighting spirit, little miss, but it's not gonna be enough to defeat me. I'm on a level of my own. And now, he looked at his blade as the green flame fully took over the blue one on his blade. I'm about to ascend it. Level 2. Fumetsu Seishin no Senso glowed green all around his body as the ground cratered beneath his feet. Time to say good night. Fumetsu Seishin no Senso charged towards Tatsuki faster than she could react and socked her right in the gut with an underhand punch before punching his fist through her face. Tatsuki would survive, her body had adapted to such abuse, but she would be feeling that for the rest of the summer once she recovered, or until she had a run-in with Orium. As she lay defeated on the ground, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso looked around to admire his work. Doesn't seem like anyone else wants to challenge me, how disappointing. He was as calm as ever. He spoke loudly, but not in a shout, to see if there were any more takers to witness his power. Anybody else? Yeah, me. A voice called out, and suddenly Fumetsu Seishin no Senso was forced to dodge a powerful sword swing that nearly took his head off. Arriving on the battlefield now was the one, the only, Zaraki Kenpeki. Well, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso tipped his hat. Howdy there, partner. I thought I ran you out of town. What are you doing showing your face to me again? Kenpeki grinned manically. This is where I belong, he stated. Where there's a fierce battle to be had, there's only one man who will be there to fight the good fight. That man is me. I throw away all inhibitions and fight for the sake of fighting, enjoying every slash, cut, burn, stab, punch or what have you. I'm the captain of Squad 11 Zaraki Kenpeki, and I never run from a fight. Fumetsu Seishin no Senso. Let me tell you something that a dear departed friend of mine once told me. When you lose a battle, you should get stronger and try to beat the person who beat you. I was down on myself because you beat me, even though I did everything I could. I thought there was no way I could get to your level. And, have you? Fumetsu Seishin no Senso. Of course not. But that's not going to stop me from trying. Kenpeki said and went for his eye patch before tearing it off. You know that if I get to level 5 you're about as likely to win as a bull in the slaughterhouse, right? His Zanpakuto reminded him. Yup, don't care, Kenpeki responded, cause I'm still going to kick your ass. Very well then, Fumetsu Seishin no Senso said, taking a stance with sword in hand. Let's dance, partner. The rematch of the month was about to begin. This time Kenpeki was determined to go right to the top and beat his Zanpakuto in order to reclaim the power that he believed was rightfully his. To be continued. Check the description for the links to the author.